All right, guys, here we are. Welcome, everybody, to our first edition of Panama FC Weekly. It is World Cup time. We are going to be covering everything World Cup, especially everything Panama World Cup coming up in June and July of 2026. So it is right around the corner. But today is a special day indeed. It's the World Cup draw. Today is when we find out where Panama is going to be, what group they're going to be in, who they're going to be facing in those first rounds, and see if they're going to be able to advance and make it into that second round, that knockout stage. This is going to be Panama's second World Cup. They made their debut in 2018. It was a great time. I mean, it was a debut for the country. They'd never been to a World Cup before, so although they didn't make it out of the first round, it was still great to watch. It was awesome to see, when the teams walk out and singing the national anthem. It was really cool to see the Panama national anthem being played. So, looking forward to seeing that again this year. And the hopes are that Panama will make it out of that group stage and move on into the knockout stages. Currently, the FIFA rankings, which were just released last week, and these are FIFA global rankings, not just World Cup teams, but global rankings. Panama is ranked number 30 in the world, so they're doing a great job. Thomas Christensen's been around for a bit now, and he's a great coach. He really has a love and a passion for the team. You could see that when they qualified a few weeks ago in that game. The emotion that he had. It was this is a passion and a dream of his to make Panama successful, and indeed he's done it. The only Central American team to qualify for the World Cup was Panama. Right, we've had a lot of rivalries over the years with the likes of Costa Rica, certainly Honduras, El Salvador, and then recently Guatemala. But there was only one team out of the Central America group that made it out, and that was Panama. So, speaking of the groups and stuff, let's see who the teams are that are out there right now that have qualified. There are still some other teams that haven't qualified. The spots are going to be held, obviously, for them, but those are still to come. There's a playoffs going on in March, kind of a playoff tournament. It's going to be interesting to see how that works, to see who the rest of them are. But this is what you have as far as the teams that have qualified. They're breaking them up into four pots based on rankings and trying to end up with a good spread of teams and competitive teams all the way through to the finals. What they're trying to avoid is having one side loaded with a bunch of teams and then some other lesser teams on the other side and kind of make it a runaway. So I understand where it's coming from. It is a new format for FIFA this year for the World Cup. Normally they have 32 teams. They've gone up to 48 teams. So a lot of teams involved there. Some will argue that dilutes the talent level, and we shall see. Right? We always see in every World Cup, no matter who it is, there's always that minnow that comes through and makes it pretty far. Morocco had a great World Cup last time around. They were kind of one of those darling teams that went pretty far. So you never know. Argentina was a champion last World Cup, and their opening game they lost to Saudi Arabia. So you never ever know. But nonetheless, these are the way that the teams are set up. What they've done, what they're going to do with this is they set these teams up in different pots. Okay, in essence, what they're talking about then is moving. How would you put it? Like currently the hang on, let me just try and get one of my graphics here. Bear with me here. But the way it's set up is they have groups of four. Okay, in the group session, there's groups of four. There's 12 teams in there, and what they're going to do then with those teams is they put them into pots with the seeded teams, the higher seeded teams, which you see in pot one. The next best teams in the world are in pot two. Pot three again is your what they consider that group of third ranked teams, and that's where you see Panama, and they're very prominent. And then pot four is the teams that are obviously much smaller teams. Interesting that in the UEFA playoff spots here, right? These teams are ranked number 4, but those teams are teams in Europe that didn't qualify already. But one could argue that some of the teams that are in that pot, including the likes of Italy, Ireland, and so forth. I mean, these are some quality teams, and so I would think that even though they are in pot 4. And they're supposed to be the fourth ranked team in those groups. They're probably going to be more competitive with some of those pot three teams and maybe even some of the pot two teams. So it should be interesting to see how that takes place. It's going to start at about I think it's at 12 noon is when it's when it's supposed to start. But here's an interesting thing, as you can see, the way the groups are set up, nobody knows where they're going except for the host countries, which is another new thing for the World Cup this year or next year. Is that there's actually three countries that are hosting it. Normally, you have one country. Remember, back in 2002, you had two countries. You had Japan and South Korea hosting it, but this is the first time you're having three countries hosting it. United States is, of course, the anchor, the primary one. They have the most facilities and the most infrastructure to do it. But Mexico, of course, having a big soccer pedigree, they're actually going to host the opening game, the first game, the inaugural game of the tournament. And then Canada has venues in Vancouver and Toronto as well. So those three teams as host automatically qualify. They've already been placed into groups. They know where they're going to be playing. They just don't know who their opponent is and the times and everything. But those are already set up, and obviously you can find those pretty much anywhere. If you type in FIFA World Cup in Google, you'll find a ton of resources and websites. But of course, every Friday, if you tune in here for the next 6 months or so, you'll get to know everything about these countries and of course everything about Panama and everybody else. But anyhow, so this is the way the setup's going to go. You have groups A through L. That's the 12 groups. And then you're going to put teams in from pot one, as we saw in that previous graphic. So as they go through these, and I'm not sure if the order is going to be to fill up one pot first and then go to the next one or go through the groups or whatever the case is, but they'll draw, for example, group C. They'll draw from pot one. They'll pull somebody out. And depending on who that team is, they'll be that number one seed. And then again, if they're going to continue through that group, they'll go into the pot two now. They'll pull out a ball out of there, a bunch of them mixed up there, and of all those teams mixed up there, that will be the next team through and all the way through until they fill the four teams there. Couple of things that are of interest when it comes to these pots and a couple of regulations. When it comes to FIFA, they're... one of the things that they stipulate is that, for example, CONCACAF, which is the confederation that the United States, Mexico, Canada, and of course Panama is in, that you cannot play against one of those three teams that are already the host. Okay, so that rules out Panama being in a group with USA, with Canada, or with Mexico. Obviously, there's still 9 more groups there, but there's a couple other, caveats when it goes to that, as far as South American countries, European countries, etc. Doesn't really impact Panama in that sense, because the only one that really is going to make a difference for Panama is that we know they're not going to be in Group A, Group B, or Group D. Okay, so we will find out where they are, and hopefully it's a favorable group. But again, remember, Panama is ranked 30th in the world, so I'm liking their odds of going through. And again, this year with 48 teams in the World Cup, you have a larger pool of teams, which means that a lot of those pot 4 teams, with the exception of some of the European ones, are going to be some rather weak teams, right? And so again, I think Panama has a good chance of making it out of the group stage. Once you get into the knockout stage, though, now you're pretty much playing quality teams, so that becomes a little bit more difficult. But we shall see. Okay, the actual draw will take place in about 15 minutes. It's going to be live. It's being held here in Washington D.C. at the Kennedy Center, and again, it's going to be really exciting to see what goes on there. A lot of really cool things to talk about when it comes to Panama and that World Cup as we build up to that. Again, second World Cup for Panama. 2018 was their first World Cup. They're in that group with CONCACAF. They're the only Central American country that's in that group. A couple of other interesting tidbits when it comes to some of these other countries that have qualified. Some of the newcomers, Curacao, very small country, very small island nation. They managed to qualify. Haiti managed to qualify. Interesting thing about Haiti is they didn't play any games in Haiti. Obviously, that country right now is not in the best political state. It's kind of a dangerous place. So they never qualified in country, but yet they've made it to the World Cup. So good for Haiti, good for Curacao. Some other interesting name there. Scotland made it in, which is interesting in the groups with England. That's another funny thing about the World Cup. When it comes to FIFA, they operate through what they call confederations or associations in each country, right? And so each country has for example, in Panama, it's called FEPAFUT, Federación Panameña de Fútbol, right? And so they're the governing body in country, and when it comes to FIFA and England, for example, and the United Kingdom, a little bit different. In the United Kingdom, they don't use Great Britain, they don't use United Kingdom in soccer, although in the Olympics they do. It's interesting because in the Olympics you play as Great Britain, right? But in World Cup play and as far as club play and which confederations, which countries you play in the United Kingdom, it's different, right? They have Scotland, obviously they have England, they have Scotland, they have Northern Ireland, they have Wales, and so these are all different. Separate confederations, and so you see that only in FIFA and the World Cup, and maybe in some other sports. But as far as what we know here, you'll see that Scotland and England are huge, fierce rivals. But you go to the Olympics in Great Britain, and these guys are arm in arm playing against each other, playing with each other. So that's going to be interesting to see those guys play there. Would be interesting to see if they somehow manage to get into a group or at least meet in a knockout stage. England, of course, is one of those perennial favorites. Always disappointing, it seems. England always seems to have that amazing team, and for whatever reason, the World Cup they just seem to flounder. Although last World Cup they didn't do too badly. I think they got into the semifinals. So fingers crossed. If it's not Panama for me, obviously United States, I want them to go far. But when you take those two out of the equation, I've always been an England fan. I'm a big fan of the Premier League. I'm a big Manchester United fan. But nonetheless, a couple other interesting teams that you see there that are coming into this. Iran, of course, they've made a couple of World Cups. They're not a bad team. Iraq is in the running right now. They're in that playoff setup there. They're actually seeded high enough that they get a bye in the first round of that playoff tournament. It's a playoff tournament they're going to do in March, and we'll cover that later on to see who the remaining teams are. But a lot of Gulf states, Qatar or Qatar, however you want to pronounce it, they were the host of the last World Cup. Saudi Arabia again's been making a push. Obviously Saudi Arabia now is becoming a bigger soccer country with Cristiano Ronaldo and the likes of those. A lot of those guys going and playing over there for big money, but they're really trying to establish something. They've actually been awarded the 2034 World Cup, if I'm not mistaken. So, you should see them coming on strong. Again, some of your traditional ones, Argentina, Brazil, those guys made it. South America, I would say, is probably the hardest confederation, the hardest conference to qualify for the World Cup. It's brutal. They just put I forget how many teams are in it, but it's a long process. South America is a very, very large continent, so there's a lot of travel involved. But they say that that's one of the more difficult conferences to make it in. So if you're coming out of South America, you've got some pedigree there. But nonetheless, it's going to be interesting to see where these teams lay out and see where you get some of these rivalries. One of the arguments of this new format by seeding teams and putting these teams in pot one, which they didn't do before. Before it was just almost a round robin pick and choose teams. But then again, you were limited to 32 teams, so you assume that for the most part, the 32 teams that were playing were all pretty good quality teams. But you've added 12 more teams, and so what they've done to avoid an unbalanced bracket, because after the group stages you get into a bracket almost like a March Madness bracket, right? You got teams on both sides and they start getting knocked down to your two finalists. But they've the pot one, if you look at the teams that you see on the screen here, outside of the three that are the host, maybe Mexico has some pedigree, but in all honesty, Mexico hasn't done that well in the last 4 or 5 years. They've really struggled as a national team altogether. So in all honesty, if they weren't hosting the World Cup, they would have struggled to make it the way they've been playing lately. But some of these other teams, Spain, Argentina, France, England, Portugal, these guys are just perennial favorites. Germany, the Netherlands, or Holland, or the Dutch, however you want to call them. The Portuguese, you have Cristiano Ronaldo the guy seems to go on forever, and maybe this is his opportunity to win the World Cup, right? It's probably going to be his last, in all honesty. But they have strong teams there. But what you notice is by having all these guys in the same pot, you're avoiding those traditional group of death group setups, which is always fun to watch because every time when the World Cup draw came out, you'd see that you had that one group that you're like, oh man, whoever that fourth team was on there, forget it. You probably wouldn't even score a goal. You'd had had a Germany and a Portugal in a group with maybe a Japan and someone else, and they were really really strong groups. Well, now you're going to avoid that with the way they've separated these teams, and the hopes is that you don't have that unbalanced bracket that after the, let's say, the quarterfinals, you realize that all the good teams are on one side and some of your lucky, what do you want to call them, your minnows and those kind of teams make it on that side. And then guess what? Nobody really wants to pay attention and watch it. It loses its luster, right? The World Cup, the one thing that you can always count on with the World Cup for the most part is that as you get into those quarterfinals and semifinals, you have some really, really quality teams there, and it just really becomes a lot of fun to watch. So, but again, more to come on that here soon. We're about 10 or 15 minutes away from the draw itself. Obviously, for copyright reasons, we can't air it live, but we'll certainly be covering it here and little by little start filling up those brackets. One of the things here for a lot of us that are going to be watching on here are part of a group, Zonians going to the World Cup. This is truly a unique setup, especially for us Zonians and anybody that's a non-Zonian watching. Welcome. We certainly want you to enjoy this as well. But we initially set this group up, Zonians going to the World Cup, because again, Panama's only been to 2 World Cups now, or only been to 1. This is the second one they're going to go to, but it's not something that we've been able to experience often. The last time in 2018 was in Russia. I mean, it was a long ways off. It was certainly, unless you're a diehard fan, that's a lot of money to spend and a commitment to go out to Russia to watch some World Cup games. But again, this year the World Cup is being hosted in Mexico, United States, and Canada. I'm being a little selfish here and hoping that United States Panama gets put in a group in the United States. Travel wise, it'll be a lot easier. They're going to be playing in Miami, in Atlanta, up in Washington D.C., I believe in New York and Boston, if I'm not mistaken. I've got the map here. I'll pull it up later, but a couple other venues in the central part of the U.S., in Kansas City, in Houston, I believe, and then out on the West Coast, L.A., San Francisco, and up in Seattle. So again, that's much easier for most of us living here in the United States to get around. They're going to be in Guadalajara, Mexico City, and gosh, I forget who the third one is, but they have a third country in Mexico. And then, like I said, in Canada, it's going to be Toronto and Vancouver. But one of the things we're hoping for is that once we find out where Panama is going to be playing, they will kind of stay in a general region there. They're, United States is a big country, and FIFA's trying to, more so for the fans, avoid having to have a bunch of fans have to go jump on a plane and go from Miami to Seattle, right? It's just really, really not feasible, and it's not practical. So what they're going to try and do is keep them very regionalized, and fingers crossed. Again, I'll be selfish living here in Florida. I hope they get Miami or Atlanta, because that's a nice drive for me. But we would love to have a big group of Zonians go there, because, this is, again, a very unique situation in that Panama, doesn't, at this point still, they're still developing soccer. And I'm going to talk a little bit about where Panama is in the soccer world, notwithstanding with that 30th ranking. But, having the World Cup in the United States, where, again, travel for most of us is a lot less, it's special, right? It's unique. For most of us, going to be a once in a lifetime opportunity. And for us from the zone, for Zonians, I kind of look at it in an interesting way, in the sense that we were born in Panama. We grew up in the Canal Zone in Panama, right? So the Canal Zone was a U.S. territory, but it was hosted by Panama, right? It wasn't a permanent U.S. territory in the sense that there was a lease on it. And in fact, now, as most of us know, since 1999, since the end of 1999, all of that went back to Panama. And so there is no more Canal Zone. But when we were born and raised down there, we kind of had two countries in there, and in this World Cup we have two countries participating in Panama and the United States. So that's kind of really a cool setup. So, we're hoping to get a big group of people to get to one of these cities together. World Cup tickets are expensive, no ands if or buts about it. You actually have to put in for them, apply for them. They just started selling them about a month or two ago, I believe. And the first round of tickets they sold over 2 million tickets had already been sold. So it's definitely going to be something that you're more than likely, if you end up getting tickets to go to the match itself, you're probably going to have to buy them from a third party, and they're not going to be cheap, guys. Just be mindful of that. But the World Cup, you think of the Super Bowl times 10 when it comes to the World Cup, when it comes to the events, when it comes to everything that goes on. I remember back in 1994, they had the World Cup here in the U.S. And I remember going to the match in Orlando, watching Holland play. And the atmosphere is absolutely incredible. They're passionate fans. Again, it's like a Super Bowl, right? You go to a Super Bowl. We've hosted several here in Tampa, and when you see the amount of people that arrive from the hosts, from the teams that are participating, they have tons of fans, and most of them are not going to the game, but they're going to the city to participate. The fan zones are incredible. You have thousands of fans out there, cheering on their team. It's a really, really cool time. So we definitely want to do that, with our Zonian group and have a big showing at the World Cup wherever it is. And again, fingers crossed that it's going to be here in the U.S., but we'll see. Anyhow, again, checking in here. Let's see. Still not drawing. They're getting ready to. It's around the corner. I think 12 noon is when they said they were actually going to start drawing the different teams here. But interesting point. I wanted to chat about this. When we set up this group chat, talking about Panama in the World Cup, we set it up after they qualified. There was a lot of chatter and as far as, wow, what a great team, what a great event and great momentous occasion for Panama. Congratulations. And then of course, like typical social media, right? And well, yeah, but they're going to choke as always. And I thought that was an interesting perspective that people looked at and just kind of from the standpoint of wordplay, I guess, right? To me, if you're choking, means that you were expected to do something and you didn't, right? And in all honesty, Panama isn't at that level on the World Cup yet where not advancing to the group stage, for example, is considered choking. Okay. Italy is a pedigree World Cup country. They've got, their club teams, the likes of AC Milan and Napoli, and these guys have won, tremendous trophies in Europe. So, I mean, this is a country that has a pedigree. And in the last 3 World Cups, I think they've made it maybe one time. They've just been doing really poorly in the World Cup. That is a choke. Okay, that's a team that's expected to do well. They should be doing well. They should easily qualify for World Cups and then certainly go through into the group stages and so forth. But they can't even get in. They're in the playoffs right now. They're not a shoo-in to get into the playoffs. There's quite a few teams from Europe in that UEFA playoff bracket they're going to join. So that's what is considered a choke. Panama is not considered a choke. And I'll tell you what, where I see Panama as far as their standings in the world and where they're really at, as far as expectations go. Okay. They won Central America. Yes. Central America has some strong teams, but recently has been kind of up and down. Like I said, Mexico is part of that CONCACAF group. And in all honesty, if they had to qualify, I'm not sure they would have made it. Right. Canada is up and down. The United States is probably one of the stronger teams. And I think it's just by sheer size and amount of people playing soccer now that it's becoming that type of country now, where they don't make it. That's a choke. But Panama is in a different stratosphere. If you look at the history of Panama and you look at where Panama comes from and their sports history, for example, Panama is primarily or was primarily a baseball and a boxing country. A little bit of basketball, but really it was baseball and boxing was what Panama was known for in the international sports world. Okay. Recently, they've made some inroads in soccer. And of course, in 2018, they qualified. And here we are 8 years later, next year when they're playing, made it through again. it's I won't go and say it's a different generation in this World Cup than the last one. Obviously, they're not the same age group, but the one thing that you definitely can start seeing with these guys is a little bit of their style of play now is starting to become a more quality play. And what I mean by that, it's not so much like in the tactics and whatnot. It's in the actual personal play of these guys. Okay, in the last World Cup, for example, one thing that stood out to me, and it wasn't a criticism, it was just an observation, was that Panama didn't play with any kind of strategy or movement. It seemed these guys they got the ball and they relied sheerly on their skill. And when you're playing in the World Cup, everybody on the other side wearing the other jersey is also at that skill level for the most part. So without some cohesion and movement, so without understanding of the game, right? You saw there's a lot of things that you'll start hearing over the next few months, and if you really start watching soccer to get yourself up to speed for the World Cup, there's some things involving in techniques that are considered staples for a quality soccer player, right? And some of these things you see that Panama used to struggle with, it still does to a certain extent. And where that stems from is most of these guys playing soccer in Panama on this team, they didn't grow up. They weren't born into that soccer environment. They weren't born into that soccer fever that we have now, right? And in a lot of these other countries that have these pedigree and these quality players, a lot of these guys, their dads played, at some professional level. They grew up since early childhood playing in developed soccer, countries where they had soccer programs and leagues and, at the youth level and everywhere else. And so it was, in essence, it was in their blood, right? Panama's blood again was boxing and baseball. And so, in one sense you can say, well, that just shows that their skill level is great, that these guys, even though they don't have that soccer blood still coursing through their veins like some of these other guys do, they're still able to be competitive, and in FIFA's eyes, they're ranked 30th in the world. But I think we're one World Cup or two World Cups away from having that next generation of players that was born into the game, that was born into a successful Panama team that has successful, national teams and club teams, right? They have players playing overseas. There's a guy in Brazil now that he's Panamanian. He is valued at $57 million because, teams in Europe are sniffing around for this guy. I mean, this guy he's at such quality. Guy by the last name of Kadir, Kadir. Look him up on YouTube. This guy is, Brazil is trying to get him to be nationalized as a Brazilian because he has that level of quality. And if you think about that, with a country like Brazil that puts out so many soccer players, for them to be looking at this guy as one that they want to pull into the fold, so to speak, shows the quality that this guy has. But he's the exception in Panama right now. And I think, again, we're one or two World Cups away from that becoming more of the norm, where you're going to have some of these players now that their dad played, in the Gold Cup, 10, 15 years ago, and they maybe have played in these World Cups, and you'll see the style of play improve. You'll see the technique improve, and the awareness and all of those things. But again, when I'm just putting this into perspective, when people are saying Panama is going to choke, it's really not a choke for them, but at the same time, we are getting to that point here where we're close to that, where if they don't make it out of the group stage, maybe in this World Cup, and hopefully if they make the next one and they don't make it out, then you can say, okay, what's going on here now? We should further and advance in that level here, but be patient. It's a country that's really making great strides in soccer. The women's soccer team is absolutely fantastic. In fact, one of our Zonian friends, Michael Stump, has been involved with the women's national team now for quite a few years, even with the national teams down there in Panama all together. So Panama has really turned the corner and becoming a recognized sports country. Right. And so, more to come from the Panama national team, where, again, hopefully they'll get a favorable group where they can get some quality in them, get some confidence in them, so that if they do make it out of that round, they're able to hopefully be competitive getting into those knockout stages. And who knows, fingers crossed, they might move on. It's like I said, Morocco, last World Cup was not expected to do anything. And gosh, I think they went to the quarterfinals or semifinals. So anything can happen in the World Cup. It's, more to come. We shall see. But let's get ready to see where these guys are going to go, what groups are going to end up in, because again, as you can see here, there's 12 groups. Mexico, Canada, and USA have already been assigned because they are the host countries. They didn't, in fact, need to qualify. But the rest of them are going to be assigned. We're going to start picking those out, and they're getting ready to start making that draw. It's quite an event if you're actually watching this on TV. They've got, I mean, all kinds of celebrities, all kinds of sports people. It's the World Cup, baby. The World Cup is here, and time to focus on the beautiful game. So, a couple other things to keep in mind when it comes to the World Cup. Okay, you're going to be playing in there again. They're all in groups of 4, so you're going to have 3 matches to play. A win gets you 3 points, a draw gets you 1 point, a loss gets you 0 points. In the group stages, there is no extra time, no overtime. So if you don't get what you'll notice in the group stages versus the knockout stages that oftentimes, depending on where you're at, teams are okay with a draw. Right, a loss is the brutal thing in a group stage because you only have 3 games and 0 points it's deadly. Not impossible to overcome, as Argentina showed last year or last World Cup, but that's the format there. A couple other interesting things when it comes to the World Cup and some interesting rule change. Like I said, USA, Canada, and Mexico cannot be in a group with any other of the CONCACAF region. CONCACAF being North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. So again, we know that Panama will not be playing Mexico, Canada, or the U.S. in the first round. Doesn't mean they won't face them in the second round if they're fortunate enough to go through. But nonetheless, that's the way that format works. What else have we got here? They should have gotten started already. I guess they're probably running a little bit behind here. So let me look at a couple of things. I know Andrew Midas chimed in here a moment ago, threw something in the chat I wanted to throw up there. But they left without a point. Did absolutely. That's my thoughts exactly. That it's an expanded team format, so there's more teams means it's a weaker field, right? So some of those pot 4 teams, I like Panama's chances with them. It would be interesting to see them. I would think that if you get a favorable group where they have one of those pot 4 teams that's really not that good, Panama beats them. There's 3 points right there. Okay, and typically in to get out of the group stage, if you have 2 wins or a win and a draw, things are looking pretty good. They take the group winners plus the top 2 teams after that. Okay, so eventually what they're going to do with it then becomes an elimination bracket like all your other brackets, your March Madnesses and so forth. All right, let's see what they got. Okay, they're getting ready. They're starting to get some people on here. I think that's Heidi Klum and Kevin Hart. Man, that Kevin Hart is in everything, man. God almighty, that guy just doesn't stop getting his face on TV. But yeah, getting a point would be amazing for Panama. Obviously, depending on the group, I would say, getting out of the group, if they don't get out of the group, I wouldn't call that a choke. But if they don't get a point out of the group, that I would call a choke. Okay? Unless they get the unfortunate, luck of landing a pot 4 team being like an Italy or something, right? Which, again, they're not a very strong team right now, but it is still Italy. It is still a proven World Cup country. So, but I think not getting a point, unless you get a really tough pot 4 team, I think would be a disappointment for Panama because they are playing some good soccer now. They are actually scoring goals. They're, their final against El Salvador, they won that one 3-0. So it was just amazing, game. Then they probably could have scored 3 or 4 more goals if you watch that game. So offensively, they have a lot of weapons. They have a lot of firepower. Defensively, it's so-so, but if they're not getting a team that likes to score a lot, Italy, if you understand anything about soccer, Italian soccer is very much predicated on defense, right? Italian soccer, they love the breakaway, right? They love counterattacking soccer. So as an Italian, if you're an Italian defender and you're playing for the Italian national team, you definitely know how to play soccer. You definitely know how to defend because that's their pedigree, their strong point. So, in that sense, if Panama faced Italy in the first round, I could see a draw there. Honestly, I could see Panama trying to score, trying to break down Italy. Very difficult to do, but again, Italy hasn't been a team that scores a lot. There's not a lot of right now in club soccer in Europe. There's not a lot of Italian names that are barking at you as scoring goals in any of the clubs out there in Spain, in England, in Germany, France, etc. So I don't think that would be a bad thing necessarily, but we shall see. We shall see here. Nonetheless, let's think about some other possibilities. I mean, again, in pot two, let's look at pot two there because a couple of interesting matchups you would have there. Colombia is in pot two. That would be an interesting matchup for the United States or for Panama. I keep saying United States. I think I'm obsessed with that, but you have Colombia here. That would be an interesting matchup for Panama. Obviously, they're neighbors and they have some history. If you watch our podcast on SCN Canal Zone about life in the canal zone, you know that obviously Panama came from Colombia and, and broke away to build the canal, etc. So that's an interesting rival there. I'm not seeing anything else that sticks out as a rivalry. Maybe Uruguay simply because it's another Latin American friend. Uruguay just got their butts kicked by the United States 5-0 last week for what it's worth. But in pot four, from what you have right now, obviously Haiti and Curacao are from CONCACAF, so they're out. They wouldn't be in Panama's group. Ghana and Cape Verde. Cape Verde, I don't know a whole lot about, but Ghana, there's a couple of Premier League players from Ghana that are playing also in the French league. There's several of them. That's a pretty good African team. Africa now has, I believe it was 11 teams or 12 teams that they brought into for qualification. So it's a big group, and there's a lot of teams out there. But the African soccer game is really becoming a strong game. And then of course you have New Zealand, and not a lot coming out about New Zealand as far as any knowledge there goes. I think we faced them, or Panama faced them several years ago in one of those final qualifiers, and there's that Oceania team. Back in the day, that used to be one of the qualifying final spots for CONCACAF. If you didn't make the top three, which typically was United States, Mexico, and then it was either Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica, or whatever the case was. And then the fourth one typically had to go into playoff, and they usually faced an Oceania team. And oftentimes it was a New Zealand or an Australia and those guys. So they've kind of redone things a little bit when it comes to that. But not a lot of history there. And then again, you have some other ones that FIFA playoff. That's actually going to be really cool, guys. In March, they're going to have that FIFA playoff, and it's actually a tournament. It's going to take place in Mexico. And they're going to bring all those teams in, and they're going to have just a very small elimination bracket. They have some teams that are seated high enough that they get almost what you call a first round bye. But Jamaica's going to be in that as far as a qualifier goes. A couple other countries in South America, if I'm not mistaken, Venezuela and Peru. I got to double check that list there, but that should be an interesting pre-World Cup competition to watch. Get your eyes on to start getting into that World Cup mood. But anyhow, these guys, they should have been on by now. I don't know why they're taking so long, other than because it's live TV and that's what they do, and they're still yapping away. But really excited to see where Panama's going to end up and see what this World Cup venture is going to look like. A lot to cover on there. Let me see here. Let me see what else we wanted to touch on here. Anything else unique here that we wanted to cover? Really not a lot. We're just going to kind of wait and see when that first draw is. It looks like they're getting some movement on the stage here, so might be getting ready to do it. Something. There he is. There's the FIFA president. So he's getting all excited, getting all crowd all worked up here. Thinks he's like a rock star or something. That's that Infantino guy. What's his name? Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president. So let's see what they're going to do here. All right, so they are going to start talking. I guess he's explaining the rules now. So again, remember, guys, it is 48 teams, right? They're going to be put into groups of 4, groups A through group L. They're going to pick teams that are, the pots 1, 2, 3, and 4 are basically the seedings of the teams. All your teams in pot 1 are your highest ranked teams in FIFA right now. Your pot 2, your next highest ranked, pot 3, etc. Pot 4 is a big chunk of those teams are the ones that haven't qualified. In fact, half of them haven't qualified yet. So those spots will be kind of left open, and depending on the outcome of those qualifiers, they will then put those teams in. But at this point, those teams will know where they're going and who they're going to be facing, just depending on the outcome of their knockout stages. So let's see what these guys are getting ready to do here. Let's see here. Who are they going to bring in? All right, there they are. So they're introducing people. There's the president and first lady, and again, this is hosted by the United States primarily. United States will be the finals will be in the United States. So they, again, and the bulk of the games are played in the United States for obvious reasons. They have the most infrastructure in order to host this and whatnot. But we're going to go ahead and if these guys would hurry up. I mean, this is the pitfalls of doing things live, right? You sometimes get, depending on timing of other people, see if it works or not. And we're going to see if this one works here. But anyhow, I was acknowledging the presidents of Mexico and the president of Canada as well. So, yeah, I mean, again, there are 3 countries hosting it, which is a great endeavor. And the infrastructure is here to do that, right? It's travel between Canada, the United States, and Mexico is quite common. It's quite prevalent everywhere. So not a big deal. Getting in and out of international flights to all of those countries and all those big cities is quite common. So it really is a great setup for FIFA. I think it really with so many countries in Asia and Oceania and South America now involved, it really is probably as centralized as you can get. In fact, recently, last probably 10 or 15 years, you've seen the United States host several of the South American tournaments, right? The Copa America, which is a South American tournament, similar to World Cup, but it just involves teams in South America. So you have Argentina playing Brazil, etc., but only South America. That's a big tournament, and they're planning, I think, in 2027 again. They're talking about hosting it in the United States. They've done it a couple times, so been very successful. And again, the United States certainly has the infrastructure when it comes to stadiums and hotels and eateries and everything else to support a great World Cup. So we'll see what happens here, but. Again, the U.S. will get the bulk of these games. In fact, I'm trying to pull that up now, but I've got all my screens full here, so I can't really figure that out. But God Almighty, these guys can yap, man. You think I can talk a lot? These guys just won't shut up, man. Just do the draw, for God's sakes. But anyway, a couple other things to talk about then. What's in store for us for the next 6 months, So, Panama has already qualified, right? They don't have to play any more competitive matches until June. So typically what happens once you qualify for the World Cup, your players, typically players playing for the national teams, especially in World Cup countries, probably have players that are playing, overseas for different club teams. That's how they make their living, right? I guess for those of you that are new to the soccer game and new to the international soccer game, when it comes to the World Cup versus when it comes to Real Madrid, Manchester United, and things like that, that's what they call club soccer, and the World Cup is what they call national soccer. The closest thing to it in the United States and the U.S. sports world is probably basketball in the Olympics, right? You have the NBA where you got players from all different countries now, especially, but they play for a club team, a private team in a private league. They're paid a salary. Those guys then, when it comes to national play, in the case of basketball, it's the Olympics. When it comes to the Olympics, they go back to their countries and they play for their countries. So it's interesting during the Olympics, for example, to watch, France now has a lot of NBA players and some pretty good ones. And so when they play the United States in the Olympics, it's actually a competitive match, and you recognize a lot of the players because you see them in the NBA all the time. So that's similar to soccer in that sense, where teams play for their clubs throughout the year, and every so often they take a break to go what they call an international break, and that's when they all fly back to their countries and play for Team USA, Team Panama, Team England, etc. And so this is where you'll get a chance to really start evaluating and see what Panama's chances are. Obviously there's not a lot of Panamanian players in Europe and in the bigger leagues, overseas, but that there are a few, like I mentioned, that Kadir guy in playing for Botafogo in Brazil. There's a kid playing in Spain that's Panamanian. He's playing in the second or third division, but he is just rocking it, right? But they're still out there. You can still follow them. There's enough sports publications that you can just kind of keep an eye on where these players are and what they're doing. And then there's still going to be a couple of international breaks between now and the World Cup. And the teams that have qualified, like Panama will do, is they will schedule what's called a friendly, and they'll play a game against another team. And of course, after today, they're going to know who they're facing in their group stage. So they'll try and schedule a game with a team that plays similar style to one of the teams in their group, so they can kind of start practicing against those tactics and against that style of play. And then that buildup comes up until, of course, you get up to the World Cup. So that's a lot of what we'll be covering. A couple other things we're going to cover. Again, a lot of what we're doing here is for our Zonian crowd and a lot of people that are really excited and rooting for Panama and the U.S., but they may not necessarily be seasoned soccer fans. So, a lot of what we'll do is take the opportunity to talk about the game and some of the rule changes and things to expect, so that when you watch the game, you can enjoy it with a little bit more of a of knowledge of the game per se, right? And so that's something that we're going to talk about. You'll hear, when you watch these games, these World Cup matches, obviously a lot of the announcers they're former pros, right? And so they use a lot of the lingo and you start looking at it, you're like, what? What's a number 9? You'll hear this term, for example, he's playing a false 9. Well, in soccer, all the positions are numbered. Goalie is number 1 all the way through number 11, which is up at the front, right? You work from the back to front. And their positioning determines their typical style of play. There's obviously a lot of different formations, similar to football. You can have running formations, pass formations, some really wide open formations, etc. Same thing applies to soccer. So we're going to go over and little by little learn what some of these terminologies are. We're not going to go into an in-depth soccer school, of course, but enough that when you hear somebody say that this guy should not be a false 9, you'll understand why. You'll be like, yeah, he really is not cut out for that position or whatever the case is. We don't know about the offsides. Probably the most controversial rules that you ever talk about when it comes to soccer, especially in the World Cup. The offsides rule is a big one, right? Offsides. The way offsides works in soccer is, other than the goalie, you cannot be ahead of any other players on the other team. Usually it's the last defender, but it could be anybody. But if you're ahead of that last player at the moment that they're passing the ball, you're considered offsides. And nowadays it's interesting because what they do is, they've got, especially in games like the World Cup where you have so many cameras and so much technology. They have it down to the inch, and just really like a laser designator. But what's interesting is that it's not the entire body that counts for the offsides. Okay. If it's a part of, for example, if you're running and your hand is sticking out in front and your hand is offsides, that is not considered offsides because your hand is not a part of the body that can be used to score. Right. So obviously, other than the hand, there's not a whole lot else that cannot be used, but that's how they determine it. You'll see sometimes on replays where it's just barely a shoulder in or just a kneecap is across that line, and they'll call the offsides. Really frustrating thing with the offsides rule, and I can't for the life of me understand why they do this, because one day somebody's going to really get hurt for this. You'll watch the game, and these guys are going downfield, and they're attacking, they're moving fast, and you'll see a pass made, and somebody's clearly offsides, and they'll let the play keep going. And after they shoot, whether they score or don't score, then the side judge puts his flag up, announcing that it's offsides. And I know that what they're doing, the mindset behind it is because you have replay now. So let them play on, and in case it's a mistake, you let it happen. And while I understand when it's happening in those real short, last second situations, but oftentimes you see this when they're still way outside of the box. And there's no reason to allow that play to continue. And that happens a lot. And so sometimes you'll see that after a pass is made, you don't see the flag go up. Don't worry, it's probably going to go up here in just a bit, or all of a sudden you're like, well, why did they raise a flag when it first happened? And that's kind of the reasoning behind that when it comes to the offsides rule. The other one that's really frustrating, and this one seems to change every year. Every year FIFA seems to update or tweak this rule. It's the handball, right? The handball rule, it used to be very simple. You couldn't touch the ball with your hand, and if you did, it's a foul, it's a penalty. The ball either goes to the other team or a penalty shot if it's in the box. Whereas now there has to be intent, which for the life of me, I can't figure out how a ref can get into somebody's head and know whether they intended to do it on purpose or they were trying to be sneaky about it. These guys are professionals, right? They know the art of the what do they call it? The dark arts, as they call it in England, right? The little tricks and things that they do. And so it makes you wonder, how do you know what intent is? But, that is one of the rules. The other one is if it's too close for you to react to it, right? If you're standing next to me, the ball hits you and you kick it and it right away hits my hand, they're not going to call that. Typically, they refer to that as ball to hand. It wasn't the hand going out. And then the last one is your body and your hands in a natural position? And that's the one that probably creates the most arguments or controversy. Because you take, for example, when somebody jumps, right? You use your arms a lot for leverage when you jump, right? And so you kick your arm up and then you jump up, and it's just a natural body movement to use those arms to get leverage. And so your hand may be up there and the ball hits it, and if you're rooting for the team that just kicked the ball, you're screaming, "Hey, that's a handball! It's clear." But oftentimes they'll turn and say, "Well, that was part of natural body movement." Above the head, not so often, but typically out to the sides, right? If you're falling, for example, people go to break their fall, you put your hand out. Well, if you happen to be falling and you put your hand out, and the ball's rolling by and you hit it with your hand, do they call a handball or not? Was it a natural body position or not to break your fall, or was it an attempt to block the ball? So that's one of those you just got to pay attention to what the latest rules are, and typically they'll explain it, and you'll understand whether whether the call was right or wrong, depending on whether it was for or against your team, I guess. So that's another interesting one to see. I guess the other one when it comes to questions in the World Cup and national teams is eligibility, right? Where can you play soccer for what country, depending on your history, your family's history, etc. And the rule states that you can go up as far as your grandparents. And if your grandparents were from a certain country, then you have eligibility for that country. That being said, uh, you cannot go from one country to another if you've played a certain number of games for that team's national team at what they call the senior level, right? If you played for the U14, the 14 and under team for Team Canada, for example, but your mom's American, your dad's Canadian, and so forth, you could end up playing for Team USA still because, again, you didn't play at the senior level there. But that's one of those that's interesting to watch. You see that a lot in England, for example, because some of these guys, English, Irish, Scottish, all of those, you have, guy used to coach soccer with his, he's from Scotland, wife's from England. So his kid, if he had the good fortune of playing soccer at that level, he'd have a choice. Do I want to play for Scotland or England? And a lot of times it's depending on where they're at, level wise. Scotland right now is doing really well. They've got a pretty decent team right now. So right now, any of those youngsters, they probably lean towards Scotland a little bit more than they normally would in those lean years, right? But that's something you'll see sometimes, that guy playing in Brazil right now, Kadir. Brazil really wants him to play for Canada, and I guess because one of his parents or grandparents is from Brazil, he's eligible there, right? And he hasn't featured for the Panama national team enough that he would consider locked into Panama's team. So, you'll see some of that here, and you may even see it to a level where if you've followed soccer and seen some guy at the U18 or U19 team, which is almost at the senior level, some of those guys are professional enough to do that, and they'll play for one country, and all of a sudden you see them play for another country. You get a lot also in Europe with the African teams, right? With these guys that play for either France or Ghana or Ivory Coast, etc. So that's that. Again, that eligibility is based on your grandparents' nationalities. So, all right, I think they're getting ready to do something here. No, they didn't. For God's sakes, these people, unbelievable. This is, and again, I'm long-winded, and I can't even think of what else I want to drag out here and talk about. But the other thought is, then again, what is Panama going to do in this World Cup? What are your thoughts, and what do we really think is going to happen? Again, we talked earlier that those groups are a little bit diluted now, so I think they do have a good opportunity. But the key is score goals. In the World Cup, in the group stages, you have to score goals. There are tiebreakers. Goal difference is a tiebreaker, right? And so the goals against and goals in favor does make a difference. But lately, Panama has been scoring a lot of goals, right? Thomas Christensen does have a team that really seems like it's going to be able to do some damage, hopefully, on the front line, and hopefully the back line will be able to do the same thing as well. So, okay, now they're going to talk about the FIFA Peace Prize, of course. Okay, so that's another thing. FIFA's rolling out something called a FIFA Peace Prize. I don't know what that is, but it's more and more of these sports leagues and sports organizations want to get involved in everything but their sports. So I guess we'll have to watch along for this as well. And then finally, we're going to get this World Cup break here. But Let's see. Other rules. I was trying to think of what other rules we want to focus on or watch that are going to impact us. I mean, that really is most of what they're talking about as far as rule changes go. You know, VAR is a real frustrating thing. You know, I honestly used to be okay with having the humans and having the human error element. You know, it happens, but some of the times these VAR things are more frustrating than anything, right? You wait 2 and 3 minutes and they come back and they make a call. It's like, wait a minute, we just saw the replay 57 times and I did not see that, right? So, but it's the technology that we're in, right? It's 2025. We have a lot of technology, and in all honesty, I think you know, from a fairness standpoint, it does eliminate, you know, some of the human error factor there. But oh, here's the other one. This is something interesting, and we saw this for the first time in the World Cup uh, in Qatar 4 years ago. If you notice the games, you know, the way soccer, the clock starts, it counts up. It doesn't count down like traditional sports do here in the United States, right? Soccer starts the game, the whistle starts at 0 on the clock. And you're playing 90 minutes of football. You're playing 45-minute halves, and then you move on. Now, what they do is, because they don't start and stop the clock like you do in other sports, it's constantly running. But there are times when things happen that stop the play, obviously with free kicks, penalties, etc., and also injuries, right? If it's a, you know, bad enough injury, you can be down there for 3, 4, 5 minutes, and yet the clock continues to run. And if you notice, the refs always have a watch on their hand, and it's got a timer on it, right? And as soon as they have to stop play for something, he'll start that, right? And it'll keep going and going and going. All of a sudden, they're getting ready to start play again. He'll stop it, and they'll just keep banking that time. So at the end of the game, he can look at, okay, there's been an extra X amount of minutes. Now he has that discretion to continue the play past that 90 minutes, or if it's the first half, past that 45-minute mark. Okay. And so what had happened was, over the years, you know, going back to that term we used earlier, the dark arts, which is again used a lot in England. The dark arts means, you know how to fall to get a call, right? You know how to do certain things to get the ref to look at a certain thing and make the call that you want. You know, the dark arts. Well, one of them was delaying things like, for example, the throw-in, right? These guys walk around and look around and, you know, to hurry up to throw the ball. And one of the things that people figured out to do is you keep walking up the field, and pretty soon the ref's like, hey, back up. You got to do throwing back there. Well, guess what? You just killed 30 seconds doing that. You do that 10 times in a game, that's 3 minutes. That might be the last 3 minutes of the game that we were, you know, counting on for play. So FIFA did a study a few years ago, and what they found out was that in the previous World Cup, in a 90-minute game, they had actually played 40 minutes of soccer. Less than half of the 90 minutes was actually playing on the field. The rest of the time was chasing the ball, looking around who to throw it into. You know, the guy gets substituted, he walks really slowly off the field, all of those things. And so what FIFA said is, listen, we're going to just keep adding that time and play it at the end of the game. So all of a sudden you're watching a game last World Cup and you're like, whoa. And the sign comes up right after the 90 minutes saying how much the extra time is. And next thing you saw like 12 minutes, 16 minutes. You're like, wow, what is going on here? And it wasn't the exception, it was the norm. And so they explained that that's what's going on here is that delay a game thing, right? They're going to curtail it a little bit, but, you know, I think the message has gotten out that, you know, you can't start slowing the game down because it's going to backfire on you. You know, if you're trying to kill the time and kill the clock, they're going to give that team that clock time at the end of the game anyway, and all you're doing is allowing that team to rest by prolonging it. So we'll see. There is talk of during throw-ins, for example, right? Because the throw-in, that's one of they do. They look around, hey, you know, who do I throw the ball to? And what they're getting ready to start doing now is the ref's going to give you so many seconds. And if you don't, he's going to blow the whistle. Guess what? The throw-in now goes to the other team. So that's a big deal, right? To change possession simply by wasting time. So, you know, more to come on that, but that's another one of those rules to pay attention to because, you know, don't be surprised if you see a game that as they get to the 90 minutes, that board comes up with the extra time, and it turns out that you got another 10 minutes to go. And here you're hoping, you know, Panama's leading 1-0 on Italy, right? And you're like, what? They got 10 more minutes now. So that's the reasoning behind it, is to avoid that time wasting that's become so prevalent. That when they came out with that stat, that just absolutely blew me away. That less than half of the game, which is 90 minutes, that's a long time, right? Most of your sports that are timed, you're 60 minutes, right? And this was 90 minutes, and yet even less than half of that was actually playing time. So, looking forward to that improving and getting away from all that time wasting, because it really is irritating. It's everybody knows what you're doing. They've cracked down on the refs doing that, or the refs, the keepers doing it. They usually give them a yellow card, and obviously you get two of those and you're out of the game. So that could be problematic, as well as it's not just the whole yellow card factor, but you accumulate X amount of those yellow cards, you can't play the next game. And I think you're allowed. I'll double check the rules because they may have changed it, but I think you're allowed 2 yellow cards in the group stage, and if you get a third one, then you miss out on the next match. So you have the good fortune of making it out of the group stage, and you're not eligible to play in the first knockout stage. That may make the difference and send you guys home. So that's something that they're gonna keep an eye on as well. But man alive, guys, I am trying my best to stretch this out, but these guys are not helping me. They are just yapping away. They have the president of FIFA and President Trump on stage now, and they got in front of the trophy. I believe it's called the Jules Verne Trophy, if it's not. But we're going to see what they do here, and if we can finally, for God's sakes, get this World Cup draw going. It's a long time coming. It's something we've been looking forward to for a while there, especially after Panama's great qualifying. That was an interesting road trip for Panama. That qualifying, it got the last round was actually two games. The first one was in Guatemala, and both of them were must-win games. Right, Panama was in a group with Suriname, and Suriname, which is interesting why they would put Suriname in CONCACAF, because Suriname is actually a South American country, but they made the exception there. I think it's because of the size of South America and Suriname, playing where they're at or whatnot. But they had a great team all of a sudden this last qualifying tournament. A very exciting team. They were scoring goals left and right. And so Suriname and Panama were basically tied going into the last round, right? And so Suriname won their game. I believe it was like 5-0 or something. Basically, it forced Panama to have to win their game against El Salvador and outscore Suriname's game by 3 goals. In other words, they had to score at least 3 goals, and if so, hopefully Suriname didn't score any goals. And as it turns out, Panama did score their 3 goals. Suriname scored 1 goal, but they ended up losing the game anyway, so the tiebreaker wasn't any longer in play. It was Panama won, Suriname lost, so Panama had one more victory, and they ended up winning the group. But it was exciting, right? When they went to Guatemala for the semifinal, I guess if you want to call it that, very, very hostile environment. They arrived at the airport. They were being abused and shouted at and whatnot. The bus ride to the stadium or the hotel, same thing. Just, the whole path from the airport to the hotel was just mayhem. Same thing in the stadium. Very hostile crowd in the stadium as well. And Panama managed to win the game, right? And it was so acrimonious that there was even talk that Guatemala, out of spite, was going to throw the game against Suriname, which then would have forced Panama to have to just outscored El Salvador by a lot. And but as it turns out, they didn't. Guatemala stepped up, as did the honorable thing, and went out there and gave Suriname a hard game, and so much so that they were up 2-0 or 3-0 with, I think Suriname scored in the last minute of the game or something. It wasn't enough to do anything at that point. And then of course, a minute later, the celebrations in Panama, because they won and Suriname lost, and so now they were officially in the World Cup. Suriname now, of course, is one of those teams that will be in that qualifying tournament come March in Mexico. But Panama has a good fortune of not having to do that now. So now they have basically 6 or 7 months to prepare for the World Cup, to start looking after today at who the opponents are, what style of play. The thing about national teams, which is always interesting for these managers, they don't get a lot of time to work with these players, right? These players are playing for their club teams all year long. And it's every so often, every couple of months, or it seems like every couple of weeks nowadays, they have what they call that international break. And that's the time for these players to go play for their national teams. And so these managers don't have a lot of time to evaluate the players other than watching them, right? And certainly for Thomas Christensen, I imagine, being that most of the guys playing in Panama are still somewhat localized, right? They're probably still playing in Panama for the most part, maybe in a couple of clubs in Central America, South America. So there's not a lot of travel involved there, but that's how they evaluate their players. Is they go and sit and watch these games and watch them play, and figure out who does what and who they need. And now, of course, knowing who your opponents are going to be will give you that extra ammunition to really evaluate based on what your opponent brings to the table, based on their style of play, the personalities out there, and so they can, pick guys accordingly. It may not always be the same guys, but depending on your opponent, you may want a stronger defensive team. I'm certainly if your pot A opponent is a Brazil and Argentina, and England, teams that like to run and move and score a lot, you probably want to play a more defensive counterattacking, role. But if you're playing against a pot 4 team, I don't know, you name it, Haiti or somebody. Well, Haiti, they can't do it, but one of those much smaller teams as well, an Oceania team, New Zealand, for example, you might be able to get a stronger attacking team there. Which again, you want to get some points. If you run into a tiebreaker, you want to have goals in favor, on your side. So, you would set up an attacking team there, and certainly would pick and look for those type of players. That Kadir type player, he's a forward. So he scores a lot of goals, but all that is going to be dependent on who they're going to face. And man, oh man, I should get some kind of an award for being able to stretch out a intro for an hour plus now, man. But God Almighty, these guys, they just can't get this figured out. I got everything queued up, ready to go. I just need okay. Now they're walking out with the trophy, so I think they are officially getting ready to start. Look at this guy. He's got the Jules Ramir trophy, I believe is what it's called. It's a nice trophy. Not the biggest one, but I'll tell you what, if I had my choice of which trophies I'd want to hold up, if playing in a sports career, if I could pick any one, I think the World Cup would be pretty awesome. It's one that billions of people are watching. It's yeah, that's pretty cool, man. I think that would be an awesome one to lift up, but then again, I'm very biased on when it comes to sports. Soccer is my favorite sport. I'm a big Manchester United fan. So, the World Cup trophy, I think follow that would be the Champions League trophy. And then of course the Premier League trophy. So, but we shall see. Who knows? Maybe one day in my lifetime, Panama will lift that World Cup trophy. Not sure. That would be quite a stretch, but stranger things have happened, right? So, but all right, looks like they're getting ready to do something now. Oh no, they're gonna have another interview. Oh, they're interviewing Roberto Carlos. This guy, listen, if you wanna start learning about some cool players, not certainly the current ones, but former players, look up Roberto Carlos from Brazil. He has probably one of the most famous goals in the World Cup. And it may not even been in the World Cup, but he was playing for Brazil against France. Roberto Carlos was a defender. He was a left-footed defender, short, stocky guy, but he had those Earl Campbell thunder thighs. This guy just had like a mule kick of a leg. He would get a running start on a free kick, and it was a 20, 25-yard start. He ran way up on the ball. But, man, when he hit it, that thing was a missile. And he has a shot, and they show the cameras from behind him, and in front of him is the ball, and then, of course, way in front of that is the wall and the keeper beyond that. And he's shooting to the right side of the goal, so the entire wall is covering the right side of the goal, and he kicks it with his left foot. Okay, so he's trying to bend it and curve, from right to left, but he's kicking with his left foot. And if you think about that, your left foot naturally would make it curve the other way unless you kick with the outside of your foot. And that's what he did. He blasted it with the outside of his left foot. The ball went straight right, went all the way around the wall. And you watch the keeper, he's just standing there and just stunned watching that thing curve back in and go into the goal. Look it up, Roberto Carlos goal versus France. Absolutely spectacular. This guy, in my opinion, is the best defender to ever play the game. Honest to God, just an amazing player. Never played for Manchester United, unfortunately, but he did play for Real Madrid and for Brazil. But just an amazing player, fun player to watch. So, hey Juan, ¿qué pasó, loco? Man, we're hoping to get that draw going here soon, Papa. But these people just won't stop yapping away, and I'm getting tired of here, man. Pero, yeah, so he's someone that was really fun to watch. Start watching some old. There's plenty of soccer on TV nowadays for sure, but obviously on YouTube you can just find a ton of old videos and stuff as well. But I'll tell you what, you start following when it comes to Panamanian players. obviously, you look at the Mexican League. There's one or two players playing in the MLS, maybe a couple more now as well. You know, Carrasquilla is probably the most well-known one. This is a guy with the big hair. He plays in the U.S. He's played for quite a while. He's a talent. That guy is. Hold on. What do you mean, man? I want the Juan. Don't tell me you don't see nothing. Dime que si me ves ahora. Let me see here. Ahí está. Don't see your battery. Really? God darn, that's gonna really piss me off. I've been doing this for over an hour. I know it's recorded somewhere, so I may have to put it on live. Now I see you. Unbelievable. So it's been like a radio show all this time then. God bless America. All right. Well, you know what? This is the part that matters anyway, is the actual draw itself, and that's what we're going to see here. Pero shushi loco. I'm glad you pointed it out, Papa. All right. Well, let's see what's going on, because they are getting ready to start it. What are your thoughts, Juan? What are your thoughts on Panama, man? Because I know you've been following it a lot. Juan is definitely a Marea Roja fan. Keeps an eye on quite a bit of it. He chimes in with me a lot. We chit chat about it a lot. What are your thoughts on Panama getting out of the group? Because I know we talked about that once before. Somebody had posted about that, about whether they're gonna make it out or not, right? Give me your thoughts on that one, and let's see if you guys can start picking these damn World Cup players, man. Ya la vida, loco. All right, let me look at something else here. What is this? That will be visible. Okay, I get that. Okay. Well, let's go back to these guys here real quick. Esa vaina. Okay, there they are. Oh, it's gone now. Shushi loco. This thing. I am technology struggling today, that's for sure. But then again, these guys have maybe dragged this damn thing out forever, man. So, you know, que vaina, loco. All right. What do we got? Are they going to do it? No commercial break, so. Let's see. Aquí están. Okay. Bueno, let's do this. Una breve pausa, and then we will come back here in just a moment. Okay, so now here we go, guys. So we're getting ready to kick it off now. Yeah, I think we are going to compete, Juan. I absolutely do think that they've got a good team, right? They've started to evolve that team. It's much improved from the 2018 team, and again, they're the quality of play in the group stage may be a little bit lower than in the past. I think that's going to be the case here, but hey, you never know. We will have an opportunity to compete with the best, and if Papa Dios gives us suerte to pass, exactly right, exactly right. After that, anything can happen. You know, the thing about knockout soccer is a lot different. Okay, in club soccer, you play a long season. There's in most leagues there's no playoffs. You typically go to the end of the season. The team with the most points obviously is champion, etc. But there's other tournaments that you can qualify for, like Champions League, Europa League, etc. Up in Europe, and same thing goes in South America. With Copa America and Copa Libertadores. But in club soccer, playing for a tie is very common. Okay, a point loss, especially on the road, for example, you walk away, with a point is a good thing. But when it comes to knockout club or national competitions, World Cup competitions, it's a whole different animal. You can't afford there's especially when you get in the knockout stage, there is no next game, right? If you don't win, and so this is where you see, for example, when there's 2 minutes into the overtime or the extra time, suddenly see a corner kick and the goalie from the other team comes running up, right? Because they're desperate. They have to either tie the game up now, get it to the extra time, or try and win it, right? And so it's a different mindset. It's a different way that you approach the game as far as your strategy goes, and the teams that you pick. So I think they're going to be very competitive. Juan, I think you're absolutely right, and yeah, fingers crossed that we can get a little help. Always nice. We'll take it, right? But unbelievable, people. Come on already. Just draw the damn names of the teams. Jesus Christ. This is ridiculous, man. Wow. Yeah. This Mexico president. Your team actually stinks now anyway, so I don't think they'll make it. They if there was a Group A team that you thought, okay, would they struggle to get out of that round? It would probably be Mexico. It probably would be Mexico. Um, but hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, why does this thing not want to cooperate with me? Okay, I got that one set up. That's good. This I don't need. They're talking about Pele. That's funny. They talk about when he was growing up watching the New York Cosmos back in the day with Pele and those guys. Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was an amazing team. That was really when they got their where the U.S. got noticed as a country that could someday be a soccer country. Keep in mind that we will have 7 players that will be maybe repeating this World Cup. Have an opportunity to scout some very interesting young talent. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, TC Thomas Christensen, absolutely. You're great point. And you need that. You need to have someone that comes in that can tell these guys, hey, it's just another game, right? Because I can't imagine what it must feel like to walk out in the stadium, especially if you look and your opponent over there is the likes of a Brazil or Germany, or one of those guys, and it's got to be intimidating. It's got to be an absolutely intimidating situation, and a lot of times you need those veterans to kind of calm your nerves and show you, hey man, it's just another game, man, right? And they're gonna kick the ball like you do, so. But we'll see, man. I think you're right, though. I think having typically a squad like that, you'll have, I believe it's 26 is the roster that you're allowed to bring with you, if I'm not mistaken. But then you're allowed to have only, or you name that, but I think you're only allowed to take like 17 or some interesting numbers when it comes to soccer. They've made some changes recently, but you know, you're once you have that roster, that's the one you're going to go with, which is why they do this draw so far out, because it gives managers and teams that opportunity to really evaluate their talent and figure out who's going to go where. 28 and a half, yeah, absolutely. And it showed. Listen, it showed. I mean, Panama scored one goal and they lost that game, I think 6-1 or something, and people were cheering as if they'd won the World Cup, So, all right, well, here we go, guys. The World Cup draw has started, so let's see who the first one is. Okay, so they're having a little fun here. The first ones they pulled out was Canada. Okay, so obviously they're the teams that are in there. So now the Mexican president, she's going to pull one out. Let me guess, is she going to pull out Mexico? Let's see here. All right, she opens it up, and So it's like a little egg. She opens it up and then pulls out a strip, and it says Mexico. So okay, so they've got that one set up that way. They're going to pull out Mexico and the United States. Okay, so those are the first three teams, which again we already knew, as you can see on the graphic up here. Um, Mexico is playing in Group A, Canada's in Group B, and the United States is in Group D. I'm not sure why they skipped Group C, but so anyhow, from there then. They're going to start drawing out the next teams that will determine who's going to be placed in those pots to follows up, going through all the 48 teams. Pot 1, Canada. Pot 2, Mexico. Pot 3, USA. So it looks like they did change. I know in all the previous graphics, they're showing USA in Group D, but let's see here. But if that is the case, then... Okay. 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 All right. Let me move those this way. Okay. I'm getting there. All right. So they got the drawing. They got FIFA, USA, Mexico, Canada. They all stand there. You know, just photo op, I guess. Right. Okay. All right. So again, this is the pots that they have. These are the teams they're going to be selecting with. And again, those are the teams. The ones on the right-hand side graphic, those are the ones that have already qualified. Okay, there's 48. There's 40. What was it? 42 teams there, and we're gonna have 6 more in March. We'll fill the remaining spots. So now we're going to go ahead and see who we're going to put into each one of those groups. Okay, and see where they're going to stand right now. It looks like they've updated it now. This is the latest ones is Canada, Mexico, United States, and those groups A, B, and C. So now it's time for that draw. But of course, what do they got to do here? Well, let's probably go to a commercial break or something, I'm sure. So, bueno, vamos a ver qué pasa aquí. We will see, Juancho. We'll see what happens here. By the way, guys, any of you Zonians out there, if you're going to be going to Panama, especially for the Canal Zone reunion, make sure you reach out to Juan Thompson or throw your contact info in the chat if you want, Juan. Juan does tours all over Panama. So hit him up. He'll definitely take care of you and show you around the beautiful country of Panama in January. Great time to be there with the dry season, Canal Zone reunion coming up and everything else. So make sure you do that there. But all right, the excitement is building up finally. Lord have mercy. It only took an hour and a half, 2 hours to do this. It's ridiculous, man, these people. What a bunch of payasos, man. You know, no way they should be taking this long. But it is nonetheless, and so the show must go on. But make sure we got everything working here. We got our drum rolls here because they are getting ready. Yeah, everybody's watching intently. The entire world's watching right now. I mean, this is as big as the World Cup in a lot of ways, right? Because it's the anticipation, it's the excitement. So, I mean, just heck, you just go on YouTube and you type in World Cup. There's got to be 500 channels out there that are already broadcasting, you know, what's going on here. Every major sports network out there is covering it, with the exception of maybe Formula One. They got a big finale race this weekend, and they started practice today. But everybody's eyes are on FIFA today and the World Cup. It is the Mac Daddy of the sports world tournaments. That's for sure, man. So yeah, of course, Juan. Anytime, brother. Anytime. Always welcome to put yourself out there. But anyway, here we are, folks. This is now the World Cup draw. They're gonna make this a long introduction as well. But we are gonna find out now. It's no longer waiting here. Now it's just a matter of it's gonna happen here. They're gonna start picking up those teams now and see who's gonna go where. You know, vamos a ver. All right, let me move this over. There you go. Oh, here's another question. Who's this guy he's talking to? Look at this guy. You don't even know how to interview. Okay. He's asking this guy what his first World Cup memory is, which I don't know why. Come on, guys. I mean, for God's sakes, man. Put the damn thing on, man. Holy shit. Well, moving forward, though, just keep in mind, guys, and we'll be doing this every Friday. It's going to be a pre-recorded show. We're not going to do a live show on Fridays like this, but we'll have some good content there. A lot of good information to get yourself familiar with the Panama national team, get familiar with the upcoming World Cup, and for those of you that are new to the game, get yourself familiar with the world of soccer. It's an amazing game to follow of all the sports. It's the one that you can follow throughout the year more than any other sport because the leagues and the seasons are really, really long. Your typical European soccer, you start in August and you don't end it till May, late May. And that's your league play. But within that, you have several tournaments that you play as well. And then interspersed in that is these international breaks that you go and play for your national team. So if you're a fan of soccer, I mean, out of 12 months of the year, you got about 9 months to watch good competitive soccer all around the world. So, and then the U.S. MLS plays in opposite schedule where they're in their break right now, and they don't start up again until March. So, summertime when there's not a whole heck of a lot going on in sports wise, you get a little bit of get some MLS soccer to watch as well. A lot of your South and Central American players are making their trade in the MLS, so it's a great place to scout some of these guys that you might be watching. In my humble opinion, it's a bit unfair to say that this World Cup 2026 is less competitive than the previous ones. It's not easy to qualify for us or any of the teams here. It's a great point. It's I don't know if you can say that it would be less competitive, but there are some less talented. Obviously, it makes sense. If you have the 32 best teams, the next 12 teams are in theory less talented, but you're absolutely right. And the game has grown in popularity so much that whereas maybe 20 years ago some of these countries like a Curacao or Haiti, you'd be like, well, they don't stand a chance. But some of these guys are their national leagues may not be big, but the teams that they're where these guys are plying their trade on the professional level, the club teams, they certainly can are playing with some good pedigree ball there. Hey, Ralph, what's going on? Wrong group for USA. That's what we were just looking at. They just pulled it up and it had them A, B, and C. But we've got a couple of different versions of it, so we'll see which one works. But yeah, I did see them. They were A, B, and D, and I wasn't sure why they had skipped Group C or not. So we'll find out here in just a moment if these people would quit yapping here and just get to the business of doing a damn World Cup draw, for God's sakes. But there you go. That's the new one, the updated one, or the older one, actually. So, vamos a ver. But Ralph, what are your thoughts on Panama making it out of the group stage? Give us your thoughts on it. Anybody else, if you're out there, give us your thoughts on Panama's opportunity. I think it's a good one. Juan and I think are in agreement there that Panama brings a very competitive team, and again, they're ranked 30th in the world, guys, and that ranking is not amongst the 30 or the World Cup 48 teams. This is all of the teams in the globe. They are ranked 30th, so they're going into this with some expectations. So, but for unbelievable. I got to bring someone else to sing now. For God's sakes, this is just absolutely absurd, man. Some things that leave the capitalism and the commerce out of it. For God's sakes, man. People are here to watch soccer and a soccer draw. Nobody's here to watch a stupid concert, man. But anyway, on we go. We'll talk about a couple other things until these people decide to let us know who's going to play in this darn World Cup. The damn game's going to be over by the time these guys decide to pick. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Again, guys, there's not going to be any groups of death. What would be your ideal teams to match up with? Okay, looking at, for example, again, looking at this graphic right here. Okay, the teams in Pot 3, we won't face any of those teams. Obviously, we know we're not going to face Mexico, United States, and Canada. Okay, so who are your ideal matchups? Who do you want to see that are in these groups here, right? I honestly, from Pot 2, like I said before, Colombia would be an interesting one, right? That's a rivalry there, right? We're next door neighbors, so you got the natural rivalry there. Uruguay, I wouldn't mind seeing that one. If Uruguay, I could be wrong, but I think when you look at Uruguay, just from following a lot of their players in Europe, That squad is getting a little bit long in the tooth. Okay, they're a little bit older. Certainly, experience matters, but so do fresh legs in a World Cup in June or July in the United States in the summertime, right? And so, Uruguay, this Uruguay team may not be a bad one to face, if you want to face a quality team, but still, be competitive. Um, let's see here. Ecuador's they haven't been so strong this year. I mean, qualifying South America is tough, but Ecuador I think is a beatable team. Um, Senegal's got a very good team. Japan has a very good team. Those teams would be scary. Okay, Morocco had a great showing at the last World Cup, so we'll see what they've got going on there. Okay, yeah, they're still performing out here. Yeah, unbelievable. This is just ridiculous. But all right. Anyhow, from Pot A, who do we want to see in Pot A? Who is that strong team that we want to see, and who's the one team you don't want to see? Okay. Again, you can't face Mexico, you can't face United States, you can't face Canada. Okay. Who do you see in those groups that's a strong team in that Group A or that Pot One that you'd like to face as Panama? I'm thinking right off the top. I think it would be cool to see, Portugal, right? It'd be cool to have Panama facing Cristiano Ronaldo. Um, Germany, for a Germany caliber team, Germany has fielded stronger teams. I'll be honest, but even a second team for Germany is probably better than most teams in the world. Okay, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's a big country, and they've got. I mean, these guys, they're born with a soccer ball. Okay, Belgium probably is of these teams probably the weakest one of the Pot One teams. I would think is Belgium right now. Again, some of the guys that are on that team are a little bit on the older side. Um, let's see here. Brazil. Brazil actually has struggled this qualifying round. It still is Brazil. They're still always a dangerous team, but they're not the better Brazil teams you've seen out there. Argentina is still strong. They look like they haven't slowed down much from their World Cup win 4 years ago. I know if John Kramer's out there, that's his squad. They're looking good. Spain always looks good. Spain's got a solid team. A lot of pedigree there. A lot of guys playing in Spain and in England and Europe. England, of course, looks good. They always look good. France is looking pretty good this year. Again, they've kind of started rebuilding that team a little bit. Holland is one of those dark horses. Holland has some competitive teams, but the Dutch just seem to, I don't know, when it comes time to do it, the Dutch just, they just seem to fall apart at the end there. We shall see, though. Remember that Holland Argentina game? That was a brutal game last World Cup. Man, there was a lot of fights going on. It was a rough game. It was a pretty nasty game. So, but anyhow, so yeah, I think if I had my choice, I think I would rather have Belgium in our group. The weakest one in that group is by far Canada, maybe even Mexico. But again, we don't play those guys because we're part of that same confederation. So, in Pot 2, I mentioned Colombia earlier. I think Iran probably is the team that I'd want to face. Maybe even in Australia. They don't typically have a soccer pedigree, Croatia's always one of those. I always found that fascinating. That Croatia's a very small country, and yet they're extremely competitive in soccer, both on the club level. Have a lot of great players throughout Europe, and then on the national level as well. They've done well there. And then of course, Pot 4. There's really only three teams right now to choose from. Would be Ghana, Cape Verde, and Jordan, because I believe we can't play Curacao or Haiti because again they are part of CONCACAF. Although we might be able to, because I think you can have two CONCACAFs. You just can't have one of them being the host. Let's see. We lost 3-0 to Belgium. Belgium in 2018 had a good team. Okay, Belgium had Kevin De Bruyne was in 2018 was probably the best player in Europe. Right, their goalie Thibaut Courtois, who's still plying his trade, fantastic goalie. Right, they had Marouane Fellaini I believe he was still playing then. Belgium had a good team then, so that one wasn't a surprise. Lukaku was playing for them as well. 6-1 to England. Yeah, again, the three lions is just always a formidable team. But you're right. It was historic. They scored a goal, and you scored a goal against a team with serious stature, right? And then we lost to Tunisia 2-1 on odd. Yeah, that was unfortunate. Then I think at that point, I think the sense of being overwhelmed, being in this whole World Cup and everything that's going on, I think by now it had taken its toll. They're all the way out in Russia and whatnot. So it was yeah, Lukaku, man. He's let me tell you what, this is a guy that does not buy a house anywhere in Europe, because this guy on the club level has played for probably 12. Well, he hadn't played for 12 teams, but he's moved around about 12 times. He's played for Chelsea 4 times. He's played for United twice. He's played for Inter Milan, I believe it is, in Italy, or no, Juventus. Played there a couple of times. So that guy jumps around. I mean, his agent's making money, man, because each time he gets transferred, the agent gets paid, man, and he moves it around every week, it seems. So, but yeah, so that's where Belgium is. But that was a Belgium side that's much different than the Belgium side now. Okay, those 7 years have definitely taken its toll. Kevin De Bruyne is a shell of who he used to be. That guy, in fact, I'm not even sure he's even playing on the team anymore. But they're nowhere near the caliber they were, last World Cup. But we shall see. Yeah, again, if I have my choice, I'm liking us beating Belgium, because then again, you get Belgium in there, which is a weak team. If you can get at least a draw on that one, play competitive against a pot two, and let's assume you face a Belgium, first round. You play well, you score a goal or two, you tie the game. Heck, maybe you win the game, man. You go into that second game with a lot of confidence. If it's a pot four team, odds are you got a good chance to win there. If it's a pot two team, well, maybe you go in with that confidence that you can, make a statement there as well. But yeah, fingers crossed that we get a good group there to do this with, because it can happen, right? It's having three. Think about this also, guys. With this new format where you're seeding teams in your pots 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and your pot 1 being your best teams. They also put the 3 host countries there. And nobody would ever, in their right mind, put the current United States, Mexico, and Canadian teams as your top 12 teams in the world. No chance in hell. So you're already weakening that pot 1 to the point that, again, if you get a favorable draw there with one of these other teams, it's not looking so bad, right? But we're going to see. It's right around the corner here. These FIFA fools are just absolutely trying to milk every nickel and dime out of this thing they can. But for God's sakes, people, end this thing already, man. I got another show to do tonight, man. But I think we're going to get ready to get started. He's talking to Rio Ferdinand now, another former United player. But Rio's supposed to be the one doing the draw. So we'll see what he picks if we ever get around to. Okay, now they're talking to Matthew McConaughey. For God's sakes, people. At least let us know that the actual draw doesn't take place till 1:30 or something, man. To not waste it all this time. Yes, preferably, yes, 100%. 100%. And again, I'm going to be a little selfish here. They have games in Miami. They have games in Atlanta. Both of those places are driving distance for me, so that would be ideal. But wherever it is, that's where it is. It's going to be. I hope we get a good crowd. I hope we get a big Zonian crowd to go. I think that'll be a lot of fun to spend, 4 or 5 days a week out there together in one of these places. Especially if you're in a group with a lot of, I think it would be a blast to party with England fans. Like, you watch the stuff on TV, these guys, England travels really well to these international tournaments. I think the Dutch would be a blast. I went to the Holland game in Orlando back in '94, and those Dutch fans are awesome, man. It's, European, I wouldn't say European, really, the World Cup fans of real World Cup countries, they're a blast, man. They're really, really cool to go watch. It's really fun to be in that environment, and yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. I think it'd be a lot of fun, but we're gonna know where that is, and to Juan's point, if we can get it in the United States, that would be the bomb, man. That would be really, really cool. You know, the hooligans, yeah, the hooligans. That was the thing back in the day. They're not so bad now, and now the term it's they the hooligans don't do that so much anymore. You know, the British. Even the government, they really crack down. Listen, they even in club level, Champions League, before a big game like that, where your team's going to try. Let's say Manchester United is going to go play in Istanbul in Turkey, right? And those fans over there are rabid as well. Well, they already have lists of who these guys are, these rebel raisers, these hell raisers are, and they go and they'll yank your passport and they'll say you're not leaving Manchester this week. You're staying here until the game's over in such and such city. They really crack down on it. It's they don't mess around with that stuff anymore. In France, you're seeing it a lot. It's a big problem in France. In fact, last week a club match, I believe in Marseille, was halted because they had a massive brawl in the stands. I mean, I'm talking hundreds of people. Italy has some of that as well. The ultras, they're called, not the hooligans anymore. They use the ultras, and these guys are brutal, man. They had a match 2 years ago. They banned a group, an entire section, because they had put up some very offensive sign up or something. And the very next game, when they were playing, it was a Champions League game, you know, televised all over the world. The next year, they unfurl banner. You know, you ever see those banners they unfurl? They're like, they go up like 30, 40 rows. They go about, 20 rows across or whatever, columns across. And it was nasty. And, it was something like, hey UEFA or hey FIFA, you thought you got me or something. It was really funny, but kind of in a nasty way. But yeah, these fans are rabid, man. It's on a club level though. It's not so much the country doing it as it is these guys of a particular club in a particular neighborhood per se that kind of take ownership of that whole situation and just become assholes basically. But nonetheless, hopefully we don't have that here at this World Cup. I think hopefully things will be good. I know there's concerns with unrest and everything here, but hopefully that won't be the case. We shall see. We shall see. Yeah, thank you. I love soccer, man. I live and breathe soccer. My son's name is Beckham. I'm a diehard Manchester United fan. I got a United tattoo. I mean, I love the beautiful game. I love watching it. I remember for the 2002 World Cup. It was in Korea and Japan. And my wife and I, and John Underhill, actually, the three of us had flown out to Vancouver for a cruise conference or something, whatever it was. But we flew into Seattle late at night. And then the next morning we picked up a rental car to drive up to Vancouver. It's a beautiful drive, about an hour and a half. It's not too bad. But anyhow, I go to check in to the hotel, and this is almost 1 o'clock in the morning now, 12:30, because flight got in late. And you know how typically a lot of hotels here in the U.S., a lot of the staff is from other countries, and they always have their little name badges, and they typically have the name of the country underneath them for whatever reason. It's a hotel thing. But I remember this guy had, I think it was like Uganda or something. It was some country in Africa. And as I'm checking in, he's like, "Would you like a wake-up call?" And I was like, "Yes, 2 a.m." He's like, 2 a.m.? I was like, World Cup, man. And he's like, "Oh, good man." And funny thing is, when the phone rang, I'm like, "I'm already up, thanks." And I was, man. I couldn't even go to sleep as I was, watch that kickoff of the World Cup in 2002. It was at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was, Japan time. But yeah, I love soccer. I live for this. I'm just absolutely so excited about this, especially with Panama being in the World Cup, the United States being in the World Cup, England being in the World Cup. Man, the only thing I could ask for is to land in a group with one of those teams, which obviously wouldn't be able to be U.S. and Panama, but I could see an England Panama would be a really cool group to be in. They've done it once already, so they do have some of that experience. But we shall see, guys. They're throwing a graphic on the screen now, kind of explaining the draw here, so that probably tells me that they're gonna do it soon. But of course, in typical FIFA fashion, everything. Don't get me wrong. I'm a capitalist through and through, but God Almighty, man, you can put down the wallet for a little while, man, and just start presenting what we want to see, right? And not all this fluff and garbage and everything. But we shall see. Here we go. So A, B. Oh yeah. So yes, it is. You're absolutely right, Ralph. This is the correct one. It is A, B, and D are the groups that they're in. So I will make sure that we get that updated properly. Let me see something here. Move that one there. Okay, that's lined up. And they're still yapping. Unbelievable here. Well, no, sorry. Yeah, Beckham. Yeah, that's his name. It was funny. I was when my son was born. This was in 2000. Okay, and back in 2000, we still didn't have the TV coverage of soccer, especially European soccer, which is what I focus on. We didn't have that coverage. I've been a Manchester United fan since way back in the day. My dad one time, um, I think we went to like the British consulate or British embassy or whatever in Panama for some party, some function. And I remember the guy there talking about Manchester United and talking to his kid or something, and I was just listening, and it just always it sunk into me. And I was very young, and I was just Manchester United, and didn't really know a lot about the team per se. Obviously, I knew soccer and followed soccer, but I didn't know that part of it, until much later on. So fast forward to 2000, right? And Manchester United's on TV for whatever reason they got a game on. So I'm watching the game because again, it was very rare to get English Premier League games on TV, and my wife was 7 months pregnant at the time, 7.5, 8 months pregnant, and she's like, hey, we got to come up with a name for this guy. He'll be coming out here soon, and I was like. And I look on the screen, and of course, and I'm a big David Beckham fan, and again, a big United fan. And I watched him. I was like, hey, what about Beckham? And she's like, all right, I like that. So Beckham Hunter Benninghoff it is. And then, of course, right after he's born, a year later, a couple years later, when he started going to nursery school, that's when David Beckham made the move to the MLS, to the LA Galaxy. And now he was a household name in America. And, it's funny to get people like, oh, did you name him because he came here? I'm thinking, didn't wait till my son was 4 to pick his name, trust me, but it worked out pretty good, I guess, in that sense. And he did play soccer. Difference is he's a left footer, not a right footer. But yeah, that's it's Emijo, Beckham Hunter Benninghoff. I was hoping at one point that he would play for Panama, but didn't turn out to be the case. But nonetheless, he had a good, fun soccer career. I thoroughly enjoyed watching him and coaching him. But vamos a ver. If not, we'll see if David Beckham's England can win the World Cup this year. If there's anybody of those top three, obviously I would root for Panama no matter what. But the reality is, if I had to pick one of them that I think has the best shot of winning the World Cup, it's going to be England. England is a team that you can definitely call a choker. Okay, they have had some of the teams that they had in the 90s and the early 2000s, when they had what they would call that golden era, where you had David Beckham, you had Frank Lampard. You just had Steven Gerrard. You just had nothing but quality British players, and yet they couldn't hardly even make it out of the quarterfinals. It was really, really disappointing for that team. I became La Marea Roja. Yeah. In the hexagon. Yes, that was an interesting series, and that's how they did qualifying back in the day. Panama 0, Mexico 1 for the World Cup. Yes, I remember that. Yeah, that was and that was really when your focus for that region was Mexico, United States, and then you had the outlier, and that was what everybody competed for, was that third spot. And typically it was Honduras was competitive, Costa Rica was competitive. You'd get Jamaica on occasion, sometimes even Trinidad. But Jamaica is one of those countries. I'm surprised they didn't qualify yet. They are in the playoffs, but Jamaica, they have a lot of players playing in England, right? And not just in the Premier League, but in the second, third, and fourth division. But these guys have a lot of soccer, history and pedigree there as well. So that would be one of those teams that you could call a dark horse that you'd want to look out for, because not so much the country's soccer pedigree, but their players on the club level play at some high level. So they got some skilled players there on Jamaica's side. Again, I'm kind of surprised they didn't qualify. And then you look and see, not to knock Haiti or something, but on paper you would think Jamaica would be a better team than Haiti for sure, or Curacao for that matter. But La Dos yes, that's right. That was a big deal, man. And listen, that's a place where you've seen some tremendous and awesome growth with Panama, is in the soccer arena. Both on the club level, they got some big teams now, some good following. You see a lot of fans in the stadiums for some of those games, and then of course your national team, where now you're seeing a lot of these players are starting to go and ply their trade overseas. They've got enough skill that they're playing in countries that can pay them, and they make a living playing soccer, which is good. I mean, that's part of what you want. You want these guys now, the likes of Carrasquilla, you saw him after they qualified. you saw him on the field with his kids, and you see he's got a son and daughter there, and you hope and see that maybe in a few years you see those guys on the pitch, and now you're going to that next level of quality because, before you even played on a youth team, you're sitting at home as a 2-year-old and your dad or your mom is kicking that ball with you and showing you those little things. And you see it more and more in sports now. How many superstars in your big sports, in any sport, that has a parent that played prior to them? And you can see how it carried over. I mean, obviously the most obvious example is probably the Manning family in the NFL. I mean, it seems like that entire family is got a football pedigree, but it's kind of cool to see that you pass that on to your kids. And if you do that with enough players in that country, that next level, that next generation of players is going into it with that skill set and that mindset, So it's that's where I think Panama's at the cusp of getting there. I think the guys that have had the previous success with Panama have not yet, their kids are not at that level if they have kids already, but soon to come, right? And that's where I think you're going to see that happening here. Let's see. Please keep in mind that the Caribbean teams got smart and scouted in Europe. Yes, and a lot of them go and play in Europe. That's the thing, absolutely. In England, the amount of players from Jamaica, from Barbados, from Trinidad that play in England, and they're not always in the Premier League, but if probably, I wouldn't say probably, without a doubt, the most difficult second tier league in soccer in the world is in England. And they call it the Championship. The Premier League is the top league. The Championship is the second league. That is brutal. They play each team 3 times in a season. They play 2 or 3 times a week. It is nonstop. It is just a battle. It's a knockdown brawl. You see a bunch of those Caribbean players playing in there as well. And let me tell you what, you succeed in the Championship, you've got some pedigree for sure. You definitely have a skill set, and a technique involved there. Yes, absolutely. Panama was the best Central American team, bar none. Bar none. The biggest challenge they had was Suriname, and Suriname really is not a CONCACAF team as far as their geography goes, right? Suriname is in South America, but for whatever reason, they play in the CONCACAF region, right? That's kind of funny how that works. Trinidad, the islands of Trinidad and Tobago, I mean, they're a stone's throw from Venezuela. You can sit on the beach in Venezuela, you can see Trinidad. It's that close, right? But it's Caribbean, and Venezuela, obviously South America. So Suriname is in that same region there close by. They're not too far off of those, what they call those Lesser Antilles, that island chain going down in the Caribbean. So they throw them in there with that. Probably makes it more competitive for them. I don't think they would stand a chance otherwise. But all right, so here we go. They are looking in pot 1. They're talking about the different teams in the pots here. So I think we are looking at maybe getting this thing cranking up here at some point here after, holy shit, man. I can't believe they've been on this long. And we still haven't pulled one out yet. But they're talking about it here. So I think we are getting ready to do it. You got Rio Ferdinand, a fantastic former Manchester United great and defender, doing the deed here. But man, if somebody was doing a drum roll right now, their arms would have fallen off. It's taking this damn long to do this, but we're gonna do it. Let's test our drum roll. Does our drum roll work? Nope, it doesn't. How about now? Interesting. So he's talking about the way they've got the groups set up in the pots. If England win their group, they can only play Spain or Argentina in the finals. So they're arranged the way, again, you look at brackets, there's only one bracket you can be in, there's only one direction you can go in. So, some of it, once they set up all the groups and you know where you're at, then you kind of get an idea of who you can and cannot face. Not guarantees, but at least you know who you can't face or who you won't face. Historic wins for Panama in Guatemala and El Salvador. Imagine, yeah, absolutely. And that okay, hold on. Here's the first one. Okay, so the next one that's going to go into the next pot here is, let's see here. Whoa, hold on. Okay, so position C in Group 1 is none other than Brazil. All right, here we go. Brazil is in Pot C, Group C. Pot 1 is Brazil. There you go, guys. So now we're starting to move things along a little bit. Okay, go to the next draw here. Who we got next? So now we're going to go to, looks like Group E. Let's see who they're pulling out of Group E now. Tom Brady is pulling that out. And looks like Group E is going to be Germany. All right. Very good. Okay, Group E is Germany. And then Group F, jumping on right away, is Holland. Okay, so we got the Dutch and the Germans, Group E and Group F. Okay, very good. So far, so good, guys. All right, next group. This is Group G. Belgium. All right, so that's what we're wanting is Group G. That's what Will's wanting is Group G. Okay. Belgium has that funny flag. It's kind of narrow. It's not a error typo. That's the way their flag is. It's square. Weird. All right, let's see here. Who's the next one? Group H. Okay. Spain is Group H. All right, looking good. Yep. 2010 World Cup winner, Spain. All right. Okay, interesting. Very interesting how it's turning out so far, guys. The next one then, Group I. Argentina. Viva Argentina, Group I. Here you go, Argentina. Okay, so they're going to try and defend the title from Group I. Okay, looking interesting so far. Okay. Oh, hold on, guys. Hold on. So Argentina is in, they're going to go to Group J. Spain and Argentina cannot finish in groups next to each other for God knows what the reason is they just said, but they're moving into J. So now Group I is going to be France. Okay. Definitely a pedigree team there. Kylian Mbappe is absolutely killing it in in uh in La Liga. Okay. Let's see who's next here, guys. Next one looks like it's going to be Portugal and England, are the ones left here. So it looks like Portugal is in Group K. Okay. Portugal. Cristiano Ronaldo in Group K. Okay. 1966 was their first World Cup. They haven't won the World Cup yet. But back in the day, for what it's worth, a lot of Portuguese players used to play in those famous Real Madrid teams that won like 8 or 9 Champions Leagues in a row or European Cups in a row back in the day. And so obviously we know that Group L then is going to be England is going to be on that one. So here we go. England is Group L. If I had to pick a group, not so much for Panama winning, but just to go and be around other fans and another team, I would love to see Panama and England in the same group because that would be cool to go watch them. So there we go. So the pot one teams have now been assigned to their groups. Okay, you've got for me, I like Group G now. My fingers crossed that Panama gets Group G. So that's just starting to get some stuff here, starting to figure it out. It's starting to play itself out now. Now it's going to start getting fun because you're going to see who the other guys are. These ones aren't so unexpected, but now is when the surprise starts to come in and see where we go there. But well, now we're going to have to stop and talk to these people. And we're going to talk to the Spanish goalie from back in the day. Okay, whatever, dude. But okay. So Group G, who's the next group that we would want to see Panama in? From a competitive standpoint, I think I would want to see them in. Gosh, I wish they could play Canada or Mexico. I'd like their odds against those guys. I don't know, maybe Portugal. I mean, there's Cristiano Ronaldo is always a threat, but I'm not sure Portugal has that strong of a team. And in some ways, last World Cup there was instances where it seemed like Portugal was was struggling because of Ronaldo, right? In fact, in one of the games, he got benched, right? And that was a big controversy because Ronaldo's always been looked at as somebody that's untouchable, right? And so big move for their manager to bench him and whatnot. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, here we go. Let's go ahead and start then with pot two and see who we got here. So the 12 teams in pot two again that we saw earlier, just so you know who they're picking from. All right, pot two you see on the second column there. You got Croatia, Morocco, Colombia, Uruguay, Switzerland. You have Japan, Senegal, Iran. I wouldn't mind seeing Iran. South Korea is okay. Ecuador, Austria, and Australia. So interesting teams there. Again, probably the most intriguing one would be facing Colombia, being that there's that natural rivalry, that neighbor and whatnot. But anyway, let's see what we got then, and let's see what who's going to be put into these groups from pot two now. All right, okay, enough already. Switzerland. Switzerland is one of those teams you can consider a dark horse, right? Switzerland's a team that you don't hear much about. The Swiss don't necessarily, scream soccer per se, but the face of Europe has changed a lot when it comes to soccer. Obviously, with last 25 or 30 years of immigration, the looks and feel of these teams is quite different. But that being said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Swiss. That team's always seems like the Swiss are one of those teams that upsets people a lot. They come into a tournament, they're not looked at as somebody that's a threat, and they turn around and start bouncing people out. So we'll see what happens with these guys. Ecuador, let's see here. Okay, and who else are we showing? Austria. Austria actually has a pretty decent team. The Austrian Premier League is I think they call it the Bundesliga, like in Germany. It's a pretty decent league. A lot of strong Austrian players playing in Europe. Especially in Germany and in England, you get a lot of Austrians in there as well. But all right, so let's start drawing these guys out and see who's going where. Okay. Okay, so interesting thing about pot two, teams from the same confederation cannot be drawn in together except for European teams because it's such a big group from European teams. So we look at that, then we know that there's certain teams that obviously in that pot two we didn't see anybody from Panama's confederation, so I don't think there's a worry there. But let's see who the first team they've selected is. Shaquille O'Neal's drawing that out. I don't mind, that guy's giant. Okay, and the first team is Korean Republic, South Korea. All right, let's see where South Korea is going to be. So they're in there with Canada then, huh? Okay. Okay. Whoa. Korean Republic goes into a group. Oh, I got these backwards. Sorry, I got Mexico and Canada mixed up. My bad. Let me move those around. So Korean Republic is playing Mexico, actually. Interesting matchup there. Okay, there we go. Next group going in from pot two is Switzerland. Okay, the Swiss, we were just talking about them. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so their pedigree, the Swiss, 1954, they went to the quarterfinals. They've been to the quarterfinals a couple of times, but not anything recently. So they're in there with Canada. Canada and the Swiss. We got red and white there. So that game will be a red and white field for sure. All right, so let's see the next one here. Shaq's having a little trouble opening that one up. Apparently they put some glue on it or something. They're pranking him. All right, let's see who the third team for Group C of Pot 2 is Morocco. All right, Morocco had a great showing at the last World Cup. Let's see what they do in this one. They're in there with Brazil. That's an intriguing matchup there. That is a very intriguing matchup. Yeah, very interesting. And they are the first African team to qualify for the 2026 World Cup. So they've had a good qualifying enough that they made it in there early. So should be a good matchup. And again, Brazil has not been the strongest South American team in this qualifying here. So let's see who the next one is. The number 4 team going into Group D with the United States is None other than Australia, the Aussies. Aussie, oi, oi. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Okay, interesting. All right. All right. And these guys have gone in 2006 and prior. They made it to the knockout stage. So that should be interesting to see what they do in this one. See if they have any success. But the Australians and the Americans playing together. Interesting. Okay, let's see who the third, the actually the fifth one now. Group E matched up with Germany. Let's see who's going to be facing Germany in one of their World Cup matches. Guaranteed to face them. Ecuador. Okay. Ooh, interesting. We got a South American team out there. Okay. My Ecuador. Okay. Wow. How about that? And Ecuador, they're talking about Ecuador being they're playing in Germany's group. Ecuador allowed the least number of goals in qualifying in South America. Okay, you're talking about opponents like Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, etc. So that's pretty formidable. All right, let's see who's going to match up with Holland. It's going to be Japan. Okay, the rising sun is in Group F, playing against the Dutch. Okay, interesting matchup there. Japan's got a pretty good squad. There's a pretty solid squad. You see a lot of, if you want to watch Japanese players, watch the German Bundesliga. A lot of Japanese players there, and also in Italy, you get quite a few Japanese players this year for whatever reason. But okay, so now moving into Group G with Belgium. This is where we want to see Panama. Let's see another weak team there. Then things are really going to look good if we can get Panama in there. Iran. Okay, so man, now seriously, fingers crossed, guys. If we can get in this Group G, I'm really liking our chances. I'm really, really liking our chances. Okay, very, very interesting. Next one then. Uruguay. Okay, wow. Okay, Uruguay. Definitely some pedigree there. They're going to be facing Spain. That's huge there. That's a big big matchup there. Uruguay's won the World Cup twice, believe it or not. They won the very first one in 1930, and then again 1950 in Brazil they won it. There's some definitely some some good play there in that group so far. That Group H, if there's anything that you could start seeing building up a group of death right now, Group H would be the first one. Senegal is going to be in there with France. That's another good one. That's strong. The Senegalese have a very, very strong team. A lot of guys plying their trade. And here's the interesting thing about that matchup. Okay. There's a lot of Senegalese players playing in France. Okay. So guess what? They know they probably play on teams with a lot of these French players. They're very familiar with them, very familiar with their tactics. That makes for a really intriguing matchup there, Senegal France. That should be a good one to watch. All right, let's see. Argentina's got who in their group? In the Group J here, Argentina has is Austria. Okay, I was gonna say Israel. I thought it started Israel. Austria, interesting there. Okay, that one I think to me again, Austria they do you have a lot of Austrian players in Europe nowadays, but I'm not seeing them as that that something right. Either you got lucky in your group or you just have that team here. But let's see who's going to face Cristiano Ronaldo in Portugal here. From pot two, you're going to have Colombia. Ooh, big game there. Okay, Cristiano Ronaldo, you go to face the Colombianos. All right, so Colombia are our former homeland until 1903 and Teddy Roosevelt. Um, so they're in Group K there with Portugal. That should be interesting. And then one more pot two team, the last one left in that pot two team, which of course then is Croatia. And Croatia then will be in that group with England. That's a tough group there as well. Ooh, that's a tough group. Yeah, I'm not sure that we're liking that. England has struggled in the past with Croatia as well too. So I'm not sure that we're liking that matchup, but makes for a quality group so far. So at this point, the threat of the groups being weakened Not sure it's going to play out so far. There's some looks like some groups that are starting to become a little bit strong. So let's see here what happens. But now then we're going to go now to pot three. This is the time that we're looking for, guys. The moment of truth is approaching here, guys. We're going to start talking about the teams that are in that pot three along with Panama, okay? So our pot three teams are, as you can see there, Panama, Norway, Erling Haaland. I hate to say it, but one of the best players in the world. You have Egypt with Mo Salah, although he's been playing kind of lousy for Liverpool. Not complaining, but Algeria is always a strong team. We got the Scottish team. The Scotland is a good team. They're doing really well right now. Paraguay, I'm not sure. Paraguay, I think that's probably of the South American teams, probably one of the weaker ones right now. Ivory Coast has some good, strong teams. They got a lot of guys playing again in Spain and in France in particular. Tunisia, Uzbekistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, South Africa. So interesting Group 3 here. All right, so let's see what's going on here with Group 3 and see where we're going to end up. See where Panama's going to end up. Let's see where a couple of these other countries, but that's obviously the one we're looking for. And again, guys, fingers crossed that we're not pulled out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We want the seventh one. We want to be the seventh ball picked out of that pot. That'll put us in a great group there. So let's see what happens here. We're going to go ahead and select these guys and really kick things off. All right. Yeah, Algeria. Algeria's got a good team. Those North African teams are always good. Those guys all play in Europe, right? There's obviously not very big leagues down there to play in, but they do a lot of good European play in their club ball. So, and Paraguay is one of those. There's a hard team to read. Not sure what to expect from them. Tunisia. I think if there's any, I think your weakest North African team is probably Tunisia, but. Those guys at any point can come on strong. Ivory Coast has got a good team. Ivory Coast has some quality players. They're a strong team. If you want to see, you want to start gauging some of these African players. In January, they have the African Cup of Nations, and that is the equivalent of the World Cup, but just for Africa. Right, in UEFA, the Euros is the European version of the World Cup, but just for European teams. In South America, it's Copa America, obviously, with all those teams. And I think in the U.S. it's the Gold Cup, if I'm not mistaken, is the one that has those guys. But anyway, the African Cup of Nations starts in January. A big tournament, and that one's always televised on the ESPNs and those networks and stuff. But there you can see and kind of gauge the quality of some of these African teams, especially if they get thrown into into a Group G, whatever Panama group is, Group G. I'm already hoping for that. Okay, interesting. So again, the same thing. You can have two teams from European Confederation, but no other confederation can have more than one. So somebody may get drawn and then move to a different pot because someone else from that confederation's in there. So, but let's see who the first team is here. All right, fingers crossed, guys. This is our pot 3 for Panama. And the first team selected to go into Group A is South Africa. Okay, South Africa will be playing against Mexico and Korea. Interesting group there. I think Mexico is at this point liking their group because Mexico has not had a strong team in the last 3 years or so, give or take. So they're not minding that at all. They're not minding that at all. If I had to pick teams to put in my group, and I'm Mexico, I'm liking South Korea and South Africa. No disrespect, but those aren't exactly, World Cup threatening teams. All right, so let's see who's going to Group B with Canada and Switzerland. The next team from pot 3 is Qatar. Okay, the host of last year's World Cup. Okay. Yep. They barely qualified. They had to go through all the way to the 4th round, even though they're the previous host. So, again, Canada and Switzerland. Listen, Canada and Mexico right now, considering where they're at, playing wise, you can't complain with the draw you're getting so far. You're getting some teams you definitely can compete with and if not beat. Paraguay is in Group C. Brazil, Morocco, and Paraguay. Interesting group there. Okay. Interesting group there. Yeah, they haven't been there since South Africa. That's when they had that goalkeeper, Chilavert. big player. I mean, just a big personality too. On top of me, just I mean, kind of like 6'7", just a monster, but hell of a goalie. Um, Hold on though. They're moving actually to Group D with the United States. Paraguay is because they cannot be in the group with Brazil. That's right. Okay, so they're actually in the USA Australia group. Okay. So let's see who's going to get into that Group C now with Brazil and Morocco because, again, Paraguay being part of South America cannot be matched up with Brazil in there. So instead, they're going to take Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire. Okay, interesting, guys. Yep. Okay, interesting. So again, some pedigree there, but they've never gotten out of the group stage. All right, they're facing Brazil and Morocco, so it should be interesting there. Okay, hold on now. Well, we got to change that. So they're going to Group E actually, Ivory Coast. They're with Germany and Ecuador. That's a tough group. Why? Because Morocco and Ivory Coast are both African teams. They cannot be in the same confederation. All right. So Tunisia, same thing. They're going to go to Group F now. Yep. Tunisia cannot go in the same group with Morocco, so they're going to be in Group F with Holland and Japan. Okay. So let's see. Nobody wants to get in that Group C, huh? That's just, I'm not liking the fact that that makes Panama more likely, but here we go. Please don't be Panama yet. The next one needs to be Panama, not this one. Okay, Egypt. Damn it again. Ah. Well, there went our Group G, guys. There went our Group G. So Egypt is going to play in. Damn it. Yeah, opening game against Belgium for those guys. Darn it. That's where we wanted to go, guys. Ugh. Well, it is what it is, guys. There's other groups out there that aren't too strong either, but that was really, in my opinion, the weakest group so far that we could have gotten into. But let's see where we're at now. So the Group C, it's still nobody in the Group C yet. Scotland. Okay, Scotland, the Scots. All right. That's an interesting matchup. Scotland, Brazil, and Morocco. Okay. Okay, so Scotland's in Group C. So now we've got 5 teams left, and Panama's still one of those teams that's going to either go Group H, Group I. I'm thinking right now of those groups, I wouldn't mind being in. Gosh, I have to say it's probably I or K are the ones I'd prefer to be in. All right, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is in Group H. Yep. That's right. And Saudi Arabia, yes, they did. Their opening round game was a massive upset against Argentina. They were the only team to beat Argentina, and now they're, and of course Argentina went on to win the World Cup. So it's not a deal breaker to lose that first game, but you prefer not to, obviously. All right, let's see here. 4 more teams. Where's Panama going? Is this the one? Is this the one? Algeria. Okay, so Algeria was nope, they can't because Senegal they can't go there, so they're going to go into Group J. Yep. Okay. Okay, let's see here. One more. Panama's got to come up here soon now. There's only 3 left. Only 3 left. Uzbekistan. Okay. Their first World Cup, and they will be in there with France and Senegal. They got a big wide flag there. Almost fills up that whole box. Look at that thing. They could give some of that to Belgium or the Swiss. Look at the Swiss. They got that square flag as well. All right, so there's only 2 teams left, Group K and Group L. So will Panama get England again? Or will Panama get Cristiano Ronaldo? Okay, I don't know what's going on here. They got some kind of funky draw going on here, but all right. So here we go. Is this the one? It is, and Panama, Group K, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Panama. Oh, yeah. Okay. Here we go, guys. So now we know where they're going to be playing, or who they're going to be playing. At least two of the teams are going to be playing Colombia, a next door neighbor. They're going to be playing Portugal. Hold on. Nope. They got moved. They got moved to Group L with England and Croatia. I'm not sure why they just did that, but they have been moved. So obviously Norway will be the last one in that pot three, and Norway will be playing then against Portugal and Colombia. Very, very interesting there. And where's my Norwegian flag? I don't. Okay. All right. I don't have a Norway. What happened to my Norway? Okay. All right. So there we go. So that's what happened there, guys. Panama. I'm not sure. I'll find out what happened there, why they got moved out of that pot Group K into Group L. But nonetheless, that's where they're at. Let me just get something going here. I gotta. Where is that Norway flag? I thought I had that one here. Norway. No, it's not there. What the hell? Okay, well, let me get that set up here. Apologies, guys. Let me see here. That's funny. That's funny. All right. Well, I'm going to find out what happened there, why Panama got moved there, because that is kind of disappointing. But let me see some here. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so now nations. I can do nations in pot four now. As soon as I can get this one taken care of here in Norway. There we go. There's Norway. Okay. There's Norway. Let me make that a little bit smaller. Make it fit right. Yeah, that works. Okay. Interesting. Interesting draw so far, guys. Very interesting draw. Okay. Okay. Almost got it, guys. All right. Now we're looking decent. Okay. A little bit better. Norway's still too big. They don't get that prominence. That should be Panama, if anything. All right, folks. So here we have. That's the first three pots now, and then we're gonna go to pot four, and we'll know exactly what the group is that Panama will be playing. So far, we know that Panama will be facing Croatia, very tough team. England, very tough team. Not liking this draw so far, but hey, it is what it is. That's part of Panama. I mean, that's part of the World Cup. We'll make the best of the opportunity here and see what can happen here. But now we're going to look at this pot four. Pot four is interesting, guys, because remember, these are the fourth ranked tier teams, right? The lowest ranked teams in there. Most of them are what we would consider weak teams. However, there's still a lot of European teams there that have to that have to that have to qualify. Okay, and if we look again at the teams that are left in that pot four, okay, let me get this off the screen there. I don't know what the hell that got up there. Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay, so there's four places for European teams. Two of them are going to qualify. The others are going to go into that tournament qualifier with teams from the CONCACAF, from South America, and Africa and Asia. Okay, so some of the teams, we may not know who the teams are, but there's a placeholder that's going to be in there for these guys. Okay, but this will round out then the groups. All right, so the first team in that qualifying group. Let's see. Look at this guy. Look at Wayne Gretzky, North Macedonia. Poor thing. All right, so the winner of Denmark, North Macedonia, Czech Republic, and the Republic of Ireland will be the one that plays against Mexico, South Korea, and South Africa. So I'm not going to go ahead and fill that bottom bracket out like that because it's going to be a little bit difficult to fill those in. And we have to wait until March anyway. So we're going to know more information later on. But we're going to kind of get an idea more or less of who these guys might be facing because there are a couple of teams in there that are already set as part of that pot four. But then there's a big chunk of them that aren't, right? So this one again. Okay, so in the Group B, then the winner of Italy, Northern Ireland, Wales, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So there's some talent there. You know, Italy's again one of those dark horses. It's strange to say that Italy's considered a dark horse because Italy has such a history in the World Cup. But recent Italian teams have stunk it up, man. I mean, you know, and right now they're not qualified. They still have to try and qualify. So all right, so there's the winner of playoff A in that group there. Now, Group C then is going to be your Brazil, Morocco, and Scotland. And the fourth team or the fourth spot there now is going to be reserved, maybe. Is it going to be for another qualifier or for a team that's already there? Let's see here. Haiti, all right, the Haitians. Good for the Haitians, man. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so guess what, guys? This is Haiti's second World Cup appearance, believe it or not. Okay, these guys have appeared in the World Cup in about 52 years ago. So we'll see what happens with those guys. Interesting, again, that those guys did not qualify at home. They didn't play any of their qualifiers at home, right? So Haiti then is in the Group C there with Brazil, Morocco, and Scotland. Man, Wayne Gretzky, who the hell taught this guy how to read, man? Caraco. Who the hell is Caraco? What a buffoon. Wow. So Curacao is going into Group E in position 2. That's the group with Germany, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador. Yeah. The reason that they skipped is because every single group must have a European team, and so that's why they're kind of moving some stuff around. But anyhow, so let's go ahead and put Curacao in that group with Germany, Ecuador, and Ivory Coast. Interesting group there. All right, the next one. Come on, Wayne, the non-reader here. Let's see what he says here. Iraq, Bolivia, and Suriname. Wow, good job there, Wayne Gretzky. Nice job reading those names. Okay. Okay, so the winner of the playoffs between Iraq, Bolivia, and Suriname. So the way they do with those three-team playoff groups is one of the teams, the highest of the three seeds, gets their first round bye. So the other two teams will play a match. The winner of that will play the remaining team, and that winner of that then gets that spot. In this case, would be against, the Holland, Japan, and Tunisia. Okay, so. And again, they're moving these things around a little bit. So, yeah, they just switched these up again, didn't they? Let's see what they have here. They have in group Cabo Verde. Cape Verde is. So let's see where they go. Because now they're kind of moving stuff around. So I got to wait until they place it, and then I can see where that one ends up at. But. Group H. Cape Verde, and they're in position 2. It's interesting how they moving around to. Okay, so now Cape Verde goes in that second spot. I'm not sure why that is, but it's Cape Verde, Spain, then Saudi Arabia, then Uruguay. Okay, and then in Group G, it's Belgium, Egypt, and Iran. God, I'm so irritated that one gets a qualifier. Okay. We'll figure these out here in just a moment, guys, because they're a little bit more confusing now. Turkey, Romania, Slovakia, and Kosovo is the next one. Man, alive. I can't believe that they put this clown on there and he can't even read. You can't go for Panama. Your team is England. Yeah, I'm rooting for Panama here. I did in 2018 when they played him too. I wasn't. I was less upset because if Panama lost, at least England got 3 more points and helped them with their World Cup, right? And obviously at that point, I wasn't looking at Panama as being a team that's going to advance and compete. So I'd rather England get, win the group, get a higher seed to go into the knockout round. So that may still be the case here, but Croatia's the one that we're hopefully we can do something with. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. Okay. Okay, so this one with this next one is going to be. Let's see here. Goes into Group F. Okay. Okay. So this is interesting here. So Group E is Germany, uh, Curacao, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador. Germany, Jordan. This guy's just unbelievable how poor Wayne Gretzky reading skills are. Man alive. So Jordan is in Group J again. Some kind of a scheduling whatever crap that they do there. So they're in Group J. So Group J now is filled. Argentina, Austria. Uh, well, hold on now. Yeah, that is right. Argentina, Algeria, Austria, and Jordan. Okay, so these guys switch spots. Again, I don't know the reasoning behind that, but it determines who you're playing when. So look at this guy. Okay, so there's another one there. It's got a group qualifier on there, but they're coming along, guys. Like I said, we'll at the end of this I'll get these all sorted out, and we'll have to put them out there what they are and who's where. Okay, so Portugal in the opening round will face the winner of that one they just announced. So Colombia moves down below Norway on that. Okay, interesting. Hold on, Group K is Uzbekistan and Colombia and Portugal. Interesting. Not Norway. Why is that? Okay, Group L. Here we go. Here's Panama's group. Who's that fourth pot here? Ugh, brutal. They got Ghana. Ghana was 2010 quarterfinalist. Good team there. Brutal. Brutal group for Panama, guys. Brutal group for Panama, guys. They have Croatia, England, and Ghana. Wow. Brutal group for Panama. Hey, it is what it is. We qualified. We got to go play the games and do the best we can, but tough, tough group. New Zealand is in Group G with position 4. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Again, guys, we'll get these sorted out here. Oof. Okay. Man, that's tough, guys. That's a tough draw for Panama. It's not what we wanted. There's probably a little bit stronger groups out there, but not by much, man. This one, if Panama scores goals here and gets points, they will be well deserved, okay? Because there's not an easy team there. Ghana would probably be, on paper right now, probably the weakest of the three, but I don't know. I'm not sure where Croatia is right now. I know they've got some You know, Croatia's done well in Europe in the last couple of tournaments and stuff, but I'm not sure that a lot of those players have kind of beyond their prime now, and so it might be an opportunity. You know, they got Luka Modric obviously is a fantastic Croatian player, but the guy's been around for 25 plus years. So, you know, how much running is that guy going to do in June or July in the United States or in Mexico or something? So we'll see, guys. But anyhow, this is what we have, guys. Interesting groups here. I'm going to sort these all out in just a little bit and get them published out there. But this is the 2026 World Cup draw. We'll talk about Panama and their opportunities here. We're going to get a chance to digest this. I got a week or so now to start looking at these teams, the Ghanas, the Croatias, and the Englands of the world, and see what Panama is facing. But we'll see, folks. Anyhow, listen, much longer than I expected this to go. I do apologize for that. That's FIFA and their infinite opportunities to try and make money off of every opportunity they can. So they made this a very long, drawn out ceremony. But looking forward to it, guys. Next thing you're going to do is find out where Group L will be stationed or where they will be playing. Hopefully, again, fingers crossed, it's in the United States. Hopefully it's on the East Coast somewhere, but we'll see. Either way, let's plan on getting a big Panama-Zonian group going together to check out the World Cup. Stay tuned for more information, guys. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Ralph, Juan, appreciate your chatter out there. Vamos Panama, vamos Marea Roja. Let's see what happens, guys. Anyways, take care, guys. Cheers.